This is Commission President Toshiko Hasagawa convening the regular meeting of May 27th, 2025. The time is 10:30 a.m. We're meeting in person today at the SCA Conference Center and virtually on Microsoft Teams. Present with me today are Commissioners Calkins, Cho, Filliman, and Mohammed, who are currently gathered in executive session, awaiting the opening of the public meeting. We will now recess into executive session to discuss two items regarding litigation or potential litigation or legal risk per RCW 42.30.1101I. With one of these items also regarding national security per RCW 42.30.1101AI for approximately 60 minutes. We'll reconvene in a public session at 12 o'clock p.m. Thank you.
We are in recess.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Have a good
This is Commission President Toshiko Hasagawa reconvening the regular meeting of May 27th, 2025. The time is 12:03 p.m. and we're meeting in person today at the SCA Conference Center as well as virtually on Microsoft Teams. Clerk Hart, please call the roll of all commissioners in attendance.
Thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Calkins.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Filliman.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa.
Present.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mohammed, I know, is en route.
She's online.
Commissioner Mohammed?
I'm online. I'm here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum established.
Thank you very much, Clerk Hart. A few housekeeping items before we begin. For everyone in the meeting room, please turn your cell phones to silent, and anyone participating on Microsoft Teams, please mute your speakers when not actively speaking or presenting. Please keep your cameras off unless you're a commissioner or a member of staff participating virtually and are actively addressing the commission. Members of the public addressing the commission during public comment may turn on their cameras when your name's called to speak, and you'll turn them back off again at the conclusion of remarks. For anyone at the dais, please turn off computer speakers and silence your devices. Please also remember to address your request to speak through the chair and wait to speak until you've been recognized. You'll turn your microphones on and off as needed. All of the items noted here will ensure a smoother meeting. Thank you. All votes today will be taken by the roll call method or by general consent, so it's clear for anyone participating virtually how votes are cast. Commissioners will say aye or nay when your name's called. I'd like to open with an acknowledgement that we're meeting on the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish peoples, with whom we share a commitment to steward these natural resources for future generations. This meeting is being digitally recorded and may be viewed or heard at any time on the Port's website and may be rebroadcast by King County Television. Now please stand or join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first item of business today is approval of the agenda. As a reminder, if a commissioner wishes to make a general comment for or against an item on the consent agenda, it's not necessary to pull the item from the consent agenda. Rather, a commissioner may offer general supporting or opposing comments later in this meeting once we get to that part of the agenda. However, it is appropriate at this time if a commissioner wants to ask questions of staff or wishes to have a dialogue on a consent agenda item to request the item be pulled for a separate discussion. With that, to my colleagues, are there any items to be pulled from the consent agenda or any motions to rearrange orders of the day? Seeing none, commissioners, the question is now on the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Cho and seconded by Commissioner Calkins. Is there any objection to approval of the agenda as presented? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Next on our agenda is the Executive Director's report. Executive Director Metrick, you have the floor.
Thank you, President Hasagawa. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'd like to begin with noting that yesterday our nation recognized Memorial Day. Memorial Day was established as a federal holiday to remember and honor the men and women who died while serving in the United States Armed Services. Their sacrifice shall never be forgotten. Our organization deeply values public service at all levels. My hope is that everyone took time yesterday to pause, reflect, and remember and honor those in the armed services that made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation, and remembered the loved ones and friends that those service members left behind. Our port employs a large number of military members, and I want to express my gratitude to all of the port staff who have worn the cloth of our nation and their willingness to put themselves in harm's way in service of our country. Commissioners, moving on to port-specific events. Commissioners, it was supposed to be the warmest day of the year so far today, and that means a busy summer travel season at SEA is ramping up. Initial reports indicate this holiday weekend travel period may have been one for the record books, but just barely. Passenger volume for the period Wednesday through Sunday hit 970,000 travelers, 3% higher than the holiday period last year. I want to thank all of our employees who kept the airport operating safely and efficiently during this busy travel period. We look forward to the opening of the new Checkpoint 1 adjacent to Gina Marie Hall next month to increase our customer screening throughput, and you can see the finishing touches going into that as we meet today. Last Wednesday, I also want to note that SEA was thrilled to celebrate the return of its former longest-serving international travel airline partner, Scandinavian Airlines, with the inaugural flight to Copenhagen, Denmark. For decades, SAS served SEA in the Pacific Northwest starting in the 1960s. SAA will fly Airbus A350s to Copenhagen 5 times a week, and this is now the third Nordic capital city directly accessible from SEA. In addition, SEA joined the SkyTeam Airline Alliance last year, allowing easier connections on Delta Airline flights. So, travelers out of SEA now have 57 service options to 35 international destinations on 29 different airlines. Moving to maritime, tariffs continue to be a main cause of uncertainty for our economy. The landscape changes almost daily. On the maritime shipping side, the Northwest Seaport Alliance reports that for the week of May 5th to May 9th, international imports slowed significantly, 30% lower compared to the previous week. International imports are down almost 23% compared to our weekly average for the year. The week of May 9th also reflected the first void trip for one of the largest NWSA service calls that reduced their service from weekly to a bi-weekly service. Vessels are now calling our gateway had left China or other Asian ports 2 to 4 weeks ago when tariffs were at their highest. We expect this downward trend to continue for the next few weeks as vessels that were loaded and departed after the April 9th announcements reach our gateway. So I appreciate our local leaders that they understand the impacts of the tariffs on Washington jobs and industries. And last week, Governor Bob Ferguson was joined by Commissioner Calkins and Port of Tacoma Commissioner John McCarthy in their capacity as Northwest Seaport Alliance managing members, along with NWSA CEO John Wolf at Terminal 46 to highlight those impacts. In other maritime highlights, I have a few milestones to highlight before we move to today's commission meeting. In cruise, Royal Caribbean Anthem of the Seas made her voyage call to Seattle this month, and we're looking forward to welcoming 3 new vessels in the coming weeks. Cunard's Queen Elizabeth, Oceana Riviera, and the Via V Odyssey. In sustainable news, Fisherman's Terminals was recertified by Sea Grant as a Clean Marina certified operation. And I'd like to note that Net Recycling Day at Terminal 91 is tomorrow. And this is a bipartisan effort from the At-Sea Processors Association, and that includes American Seafoods, Arctic Storm, Coastal Villages, the Glacial Fish Company, and Trident Seafoods to collect used nets and prevent that plastic from going into the oceans. So,
You mean to say bipartisan?
did I say bipartisan?
Yeah. It's collective, right?
A collective. It's yeah. A collect. Well, I said At-Sea Processors Association, so I don't know that. Anyway, so thanks, Commissioner. Moving to today's commission meeting, I'd like to highlight a few items. On our consent agenda today, we have an item for our workforce development team that was taken out of our executive directive delegations. Item 8E creates a new aviation security training pathway. This is a win-win for the port and the other employers at SEA and near-port communities interested in starting and growing their career in security. As we continue to evolve our workforce development strategies, strategies like these, we will keep an eye for the jobs of the future and find more ways to benefit our communities while we grow the port. Also on our consent agenda is an authorization related to our South Concourse Evolution Project, which you received a briefing on at our last commission meeting. This request is to fund facilitating projects in the base building design. We anticipate an additional construction authorization request to come to commission at the end of this year, and as we mentioned at the last meeting, we are continuing our efforts to reduce the cost of the project. For presentations and staff reports, you will receive briefings from the Workforce Development, the SEA Stakeholder Advisory Roundtable, and our Diversity and Contracting Program. Finally, I'd like to note that last week was our Accounts Payable Appreciation Week. You may have noticed that on our consent agenda today are payments for claims and obligations for the months of January, February, and March. Our talented and award-winning accounting and financial reporting team has been hard at work reconciling our books since being months behind due to impacts from our cyber incident last year. This hardworking team had to resort to manual and labor-intensive methods to make sure payments went out and standards were adhered to. So we deeply appreciate their work and their commitment to excellence during this time period and every day. So I want to give a shout out to our accounts payable team. And commissioners, this concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Executive Director Metrick? Seeing none, that brings us on to committee reports, and Strategic Advisor Francis Cho will provide it.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam President, Commissioners, and Executive Director Metrick. My name is Francis Cho, Commission Strategic Advisor, and I am providing the committee report today on behalf of my colleague Erica Chung. There are 5 committee reports for today. On Friday, May 16th, Commissioners Calkins and Fellman participated in the Port-wide Arts and Culture Board Committee, where they discussed the vacancy of a public board member, but were unable to reach a decision at this meeting. The committee also received an update from the Lumiere Group regarding its strategic plan. On May 20th, Commission President Hasegawa and Commissioner Mohammed convened the Airport Workforce Conditions Ad Hoc Committee, where staff briefed commissioners on labor unions' request for airport badging to access the secure area for purpose of communication and meetings. And later today, an order will be introduced for committee action directing the executive director to evaluate issuing airport badges to union representatives for the purpose of supporting represented employees. On May 20th, Commissioners Cho and Fellman convened the Aviation Committee. Commissioners heard that the startup of the SCA Moves Transit Management Association is proceeding on track and mostly on schedule, with travel demand modeling for different scenarios. Commissioners also received a preview of the port's preparation for the 2026 FIFA World Cup and the 2025 Club World Cup. On May 20th, the Equity and Workforce Development Committee met with Commissioners Hasegawa and Mohammed in attendance. There are 2 briefing items: the WIMBY annual report and updated diversity and contracting goals. On May 23rd, Commissioners Cho and Calkins convened the Sustainability, Environment, and Climate Committee, where commissioners received an update of the Maritime Climate and Air Action Plan accomplishments and challenges in 2024 and strategies for 2025. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Now we'll continue in our agenda to the public comment portion of our meeting. The Port Commission welcomes public comment as an important part of the public process. Comments are received and considered by the Commission in its deliberations. Before we take public comment, let's review our rules for in-person and virtual public comment. And Clerk Hart, would you please play the recorded rules? Thank you.
The Port of Seattle Commission welcomes you to our meeting today. As noted, public comment is an important part of the public process, and the Port of Seattle Commission thanks you for joining us. Before proceeding, we will overview the rules governing public comment for your general information. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak unless otherwise revised by the presiding officer for the purposes of meeting efficiency, and the speaker shall keep their remarks within the allotted time provided. A timer will appear on the screen, and a buzzer will sound at the end of the speaker's comment period. The Commission accepts comments on items appearing on its agenda and items related to the conduct of port business. The presiding officer will ask speakers to limit their comments to these topics. This rule applies to both introductory and concluding remarks. Disruptions of Commission public meetings are prohibited. General disruptions include, but are not limited to, the following: speaking before being recognized by the presiding officer, holding or placing banners and signs in the meeting room in a way that endangers others or obstructs the flow of people or view of others at the meeting, intentionally disrupting, disturbing, or otherwise impeding attendance or participation at a meeting, refusing to follow the direction of the presiding officer or security personnel, attempting to use the comment time for purposeful delay without conveying a discernible message, using the comment period to assist in a campaign for election of any person to any office or for the promotion of or opposition to any ballot proposition except when addressing action being taken by the Commission on a ballot proposition appearing on its agenda, directing public comments to the audience, engaging in abusive or harassing behavior, including but not limited to derogatory remarks based on age, race, color, national origin, ancestry, religion, disability, pregnancy, sex, gender, sexual orientation, transgender status, marital status, or any other category protected by law, the use of obscene or profane language and gestures, assaults or other threatening behavior, and sexual misconduct or sexual harassment. For safety purposes, individuals are asked not to physically approach commissioners or staff at the meeting table during the meeting. Individuals may provide written public comment before or after the meeting, and in addition, speakers may offer written materials to the Commission clerk for distribution during their testimony to the Commission. A detailed list of the public comment rules is available through the Commission clerk. If a meeting is disrupted by an individual in attendance in the meeting room or by an individual providing public comment in person or virtually, the port will impose progressive consequences that may result in exclusion from future meetings. Written materials provided to the clerk will be included in today's meeting record. The clerk has a list of those prepared to speak. When your name is called, please come to the testimony table or unmute yourself if joining virtually. Repeat your name for the record and state your topic related to an item on the agenda or related to the conduct of port business. For those joining virtually, when you have concluded your remarks, please turn off your camera and mute your microphone. Our public comment period will now commence. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you very much. And Clerk Hart, would you mind getting us through those who have signed up in advance, starting with those who are in person?
Thank you, Madam Commission President. Just one moment here to get our timer pulled up.
Please note for the record that Commissioner Mohammed has joined us in person.
And I'm going to have to try this again. Thank you. Our first speaker today, Madam Commission President, members of the Commission, we have no signups from the room, so I will go to the virtual list. And our first speaker is Hachiyan. Hachi, are you able to hear me and mute your microphone? Okay, we'll move on to Carla Butler. Carla, please go ahead and restate your name for the record and your topic related to the conduct of port business or the agenda item that you wish to speak to.
Hello, everyone. My name is Carla Butler, and I am speaking on behalf of the Port of Seattle Diversity in Contracting team.
Thank you. Please begin.
Okay, so I have a company, a document control company, and I went through the Port of Seattle Port Gen business course that helps small businesses get work with the Port of Seattle and also help us grow our business. It was a wonderful experience. The Port of Seattle Diversity and Contracting team was so supportive. And I came away from that course with so many friends and contacts. It really did change my life. I really feel more empowered with my business. And it also gave me some great contacts with the Port of Seattle. I've wanted to work with the Port of Seattle for a very long time. And I appreciate all the work they did in giving us a voice and also helping us find work and growing our businesses. And I am internally very grateful to them, and they do such wonderful work. And wow, I finished on time.
Thank you very much. Shall we move to our next speaker? Thank you. Our next speaker is Venki Ramakrishnan. And Venki, go ahead and please restate your name for the record and your agenda item or topic related to the conduct of port business, please.
Thank you. My name is Venki Ramakrishnan. I'll be giving a comment about the ports diversity in contracting.
Thank you.
My name is Venki Ramakrishnan. I'm the director of Sigma Consultants Group, a certified minority-owned business with the offices in Seattle and Portland. We provide information technology consulting services to public sector agencies, including State of Washington, Portland Airport, and City of Portland, to mention a few. I came to the United States 30 years ago and worked for the Fortune 500 companies like Nike and Kaiser. Inspired by the American dream, I founded my own company to train, mentor, and provide opportunities to others, just like the ones I have received. Our mission is not just to deliver IT solutions, but to help diverse talent thrive in technology. The Ports Diversity in Contracting program has been instrumental in our growth. We had the privilege of participating in Ports Business Accelerator program, where I was matched with Matt Breed, Chief Information Officer of Port of Seattle, an extraordinary mentor who has been guiding me for the past 3 years. This is the first time I ever had a mentor, and the impact has been transformative for me and my company. Thank you to me and Rice, Emily Ho, and the Port Small Business team for creating these meaningful connections. Supporting a small, diverse business is not just about equity, it is a smart economic policy. I deeply appreciate the Port's continued commitment to diversity and inclusion. They are investments in capable, innovative business like mine. Thank you for believing in the potential of small, diverse teams. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for this opportunity.
Thank you. Our next speaker is David Goebel. David, please go ahead and restate your name for the record and your agenda item or topic related to the conduct of port business, please.
Yeah, my name is David Goebel, the president of Vashon Fair Skies, a 501c3 founded in the wake of next-gen implementation over Vashon Island. Today, I'm speaking to item 11B, the Sea-Tac Stakeholder Advisory Roundtable Annual Report, or START.
Please go ahead.
Okay. You will receive a rosy presentation today of START. However, due to foundational and deliberate shortcomings, it is not able to even consider a large amount, and I would say a plurality, of the expressed community environmental frustration with Sea-Tac, namely over the noise. I personally attended, in the capacity allowed for the public, every single START meeting from its inception in February 2018 until the start of COVID. Unfortunately, we're still in COVID, or so it would appear, as the START steering committee refuses to allow either an in-person or hybrid meeting format, such as using today very effectively with Teams. I've always liked how you've done that post-COVID. This is especially ironic as START only allows official members from the immediate surrounding cities, they call almost in walking distance of the airport, and yet they refuse to do any in-person or hybrid options for START. To make matters worse, they changed their remote meeting technology from normal Zoom meetings to what's called webinar panelist mode, which makes members of the public invisible to each other and to the official members. It's like you're just watching it on TV, except you have to go through all these hoops to even get the link to it through several steps, and then the meeting's not recorded. So you literally have to be there for when it's happening, and then you can only watch it live. Vashon Island's repeated efforts to gain membership in some form to START have been repeatedly rebuffed over the years. According to a steering committee meeting report, the principal opposition was due to Vashon Island not being a city. We are unincorporated King County. We were able to work with our King County Council member, Teresa Mosqueda, try and convince START that King County could be our city effectively. This would also help other unincorporated areas impacted by the airport, like White Center. I'll help them as well. However, like Lucy with the football, when we met that hurdle of having a quote-unquote city or at least government representation, just more excuses were made. As an aside, Councilmember Mosqueda is often very helpful. If you're listening, thank you very much. I would say community outreach as measured by data-driven, measured by complaints really needs to be taken into account in terms of selecting who's going to be on START. Otherwise, what you've got is just a Potemkin roundtable that you go through all the motions, but doesn't reflect the actual data-driven, expressed community outrage that the port has that data. And I really hope that they will consider making changes in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Our next speaker is Katie Garrow. Katie, please go ahead and repeat your name for the record and your agenda item or topic related to the conduct of port business, please. And we'll go ahead and call Katie again here in a moment. Moving to Shawnee Wheeler. Shawnee, are you on the line? Okay, and we'll go back and move to our first speaker, who was Ha Chi Yin. Okay, one moment, Madam Commission President. I believe that's all we have for our speakers today, Madam Commission President.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who did not sign up in advance that is here with us either in person or virtually who would like to address the commission? Seeing none, we will move forward in our agenda. Clerk Hart, could you give us a synopsis of any written comments that we received?
Yes, thank you, Madam Commission President, members of the Commission, Executive Director Metric. We've received 3 written comments for the meeting today. The first comes from Alex Rulata, President of Rulata Architects. Alex states that they have been doing work with the Port of Seattle since 2010 and have successfully completed over 65 projects. He notes that it is in part because of their relationship with the Port Diversity and Contracting that they have survived the downtimes of the economy and the pandemic. Alex states he has attended countless diversity and contracting sponsored workshops and networking sessions, learning about new project opportunities, meeting other small business owners, and meeting representatives of large firms looking for small businesses to partner with. He notes that some of these companies are now their partners on projects with the Port of Seattle and other clients. They are continually mentoring other small A&E firms on how to work with SEA. And he believes that getting a foot in the door 25 years ago to show they can do the work would not have been possible without the support, guidance, and encouragement of diversity and contracting. Our next written comment comes from Kaylee Robertson, who writes to urge the port to take immediate action to reduce the harms caused by Seattle's cruise sector and to reduce the number of cruise sailings. And then our final written comment comes from Marcus Cola, co-founder and CEO of Apex Electrical Group, who writes to say that the port's diversity and contracting program has provided invaluable opportunities for businesses like his, and he urges the Commission to continue enhancing the diversity and contracting program with policies that ensure early payments, transparent procurement access, and innovative approaches to supporting small businesses. And that concludes our written comments received today.
Thank you very much. Seeing that there is no further testimony, we're going to move forward.
And Madam Commission President, I do believe we have someone who has joined us virtually for public comment. Do we want to go back and take that?
Oh, very good. Yes.
Okay.
Who is it that's joined us online?
I believe that's Shawnee Wheeler.
Welcome, Shawnee. You have 2 minutes to provide public comment.
And hold on just a moment. I've got to get that back up again here. And Shawnee, if you can hear me, please go ahead and repeat your name for the record and your agenda item or topic related to the conduct of port business, please. Shawnee, are you available? Okay.
Just looking to tech to make sure that everything's good on our end.
Yeah, our tech is okay.
Very good. Okay. So let's move forward to the consent agenda. Items of the consent agenda are considered routine and will be adopted by one motion. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered separately immediately after adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda covering items 8A through F?
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Mohammed and seconded by Commissioner Fellman. Commissioners, please say aye or nay when your name's called for approval of the consent agenda.
For approval of consent agenda, beginning with Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Fellman.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you, and Commissioner Hasagawa.
Aye.
Thank you. 5 ayes, 0 nays for this item.
Thank you very much. And that moves us to the new business section of our agenda. We have one new business item for today. Clerk Hart, please read it into the record, and Executive Director Metrick will introduce it.
Thank you, Madam Commission President. I just wanted to note for any of our public commenters that were trying to comment virtually who were not able to connect, that if they wish to submit written comments to our office, that we can take those and distribute them to commissioners, and they will become a part of this meeting's record. And then also, Commission Chief of Staff Pritchard will be introducing this item. So this is Agenda Item 10A, Commission Adoption of Order Number 2025-07, an order to direct the Executive Director to evaluate issuing airport SITA badges to union representatives for the purpose of supporting represented employees.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Executive Director. My name is Aaron Pritchard, Chief of Staff for the Port of Seattle Commission. The purpose of this order, and I will read this so the public is just sort of aware where we are, and I'll just move directly through the order. It's to direct the Executive Director to evaluate issuing SITA badges, which are some of our security badges we issue at the port, to union representatives for the purpose of meeting with represented employees and administrating collective bargaining agreements on the sterile side of security. This order directs the Executive Director to conduct the necessary legal, operational, and security analysis regarding port-issued SITA badges for union representatives and to return to the Commission with recommendations. There are 4 primary areas that the Commission is directing the Executive Director. First is to conduct a research and legal review. Second is to assess the operational needs and security requirements. Third is to engage specific stakeholders. And fourth is to report to the Commission by August 30th, 2025 on their progress. That concludes my presentation on this item. Back to you, Commission President.
Thank you very much. So at this point, to my colleagues, I will see if you have any questions or comments for staff. Commissioner Mohammed.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank Commission President Hasagawa for bringing this order forward. And I was able to review it as part of the ad hoc committee on workforce development, workers' conditions. And I'm looking forward to supporting this order today. And for me, let me just say, I think this is being done in a very thoughtful way. We're allowing time for staff to evaluate, to provide the legal analysis necessary for the whole commission to be able to make a decision. So I'm looking forward to the report that will be coming to the commission on August 30th. And to the union members, folks who work at the airport who brought this forward to us, I just want to say thank you for doing that. I believe it is in the public interest for us to be able to make the airport available to Sea-Tac workers, including those who represent unions. So I'm looking forward to the report and for us to be able to make decisions based off of that. Thank you for the time.
Commissioner Cho.
Yeah, I want to echo those sentiments. First, obviously, we've been having this conversation for a very long time, and I know our friends in the labor community have been really waiting a long time for us to make moves on this. But as Commissioner Mohammed alluded to, that we need to make sure that whatever we do is within compliance of the federal regulations and any rules that TSA or other federal agencies might have around providing badges. And so I do appreciate the leadership of both my colleagues at the dais here, Commissioner Hasagawa and Commissioner Mohammed, for their work. And I too am looking forward to seeing the recommendations and the results of this study come end of the summer to see what actions we can take to provide those who are seeking this benefit. Thanks.
Commissioner Fellman.
I just want to lend my support to the effort and acknowledge the fact that Labor's been asking for a direct answer on this. And so we owe it to you, and I appreciate we're doing this in a methodical manner. Thank you.
Just looking at Commissioner Caucus to see if there's anything he'd like to say or ask about the badging order. Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge the folks who have been involved in getting it to this juncture. First and foremost, our stakeholders in labor who have been there to answer the questions that we may have, the folks in our aviation security team, our executive leadership team, all the members of the committee who've been getting this to the point where we can consider it for action today. This effectively directs the executive director to work with labor, legal, and security teams to evaluate what access should look like and to bring back a draft policy recommendation to us as a commission by the end of Q2. So we look forward to taking it up in committee and then and seeing what happens next. And with that, I can look to my colleagues for a motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Mohammed and seconded by Commissioner Fellman. Commissioners, are there any additional questions, comments, or debate on this item? Seeing none, Clerk Hart, you may call the roll.
Thank you. Beginning with Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Sorry, that was a little out of order. Commissioner Fellman.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner, that's it?
That's us.
For five ayes, 0 nays for this item.
And the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. I was trying to get sponsors first.
Thank you very much. Well, and that moves us swiftly forward to presentations and staff reports. And Clerk Hart, you can read the next item into the record. Executive Director Metric will introduce it.
Thank you. This is agenda item 11A, Workforce Development Annual Report.
Commissioners, port-related industries face growing workforce challenges, including staff shortages, an aging labor force, and limited awareness of career pathways. In response, our workforce development team prioritizes communities historically excluded from these opportunities and makes strategic investments across maritime, construction, aviation, and green jobs. Anna Pavlik, the port's workforce development director, recently celebrated her one-year anniversary since taking the helm of the workforce development team and will share more about our progress over the last year. Presenters this afternoon are Anna Pavlik, Director of Workforce Development, Germay Worku, Port of Seattle Airport Operations Specialist, and Christina Vandermeer, pile driver apprentice with Washington State United Brotherhood of Carpenters. So, Anna.
Thank you, esteemed commissioners and Executive Director Metric. All right, so I'm going to be sharing a lot with you today about our 2024 accomplishments in workforce development and some of our plans ahead. I'm going to move quickly because I'd love for you to hear from the folks who are actually building and operating our report. So I'll pass it to you when it's your turn. All right, thank you. Next slide, please. In workforce development, housed within the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, we have a small but mighty team focused on the 3 sectors you see on the slide. In maritime, we have Robert Brown III, who comes to us with lots of employer engagement experience from Washington Maritime Blue. Aviation, Leslie Horton, working with youth in her past, and also a lot of employment services. And construction, Carl Hugel, with experience as a recruiting manager in the U.S. Army, bringing folks into non-traditional trades. So Robert and Carl are here with me today. I'd love for them to wave their hands because their work is really what's sitting at this table and all of the accomplishments I'll share with you today. And we also have Crystal Dome, who is our fearless contract and budget specialist. And a special shout out to our senior director, Bukta Kesar, for leading us in all of this important work. So we see green jobs as scattered throughout those 3 sectors, not as a particular industry itself. Most green jobs are existing occupations, like the one you'll hear about today from Christina as a pile driver apprentice. We're also looking at jobs of the future. So as we're doing our strategic planning for the remainder of the year, you'll be hearing us think through, and we'll be looking for your leadership as well in how we define jobs of the future and green jobs. Next slide, please. We're grounded in our commitment through the Century Agenda to advance regional workforce development in port-related industries by providing equitable access to quality careers. And I think it's important to say that up front because as we continue to live out our values as a port, that remains front and center to our work in workforce development, ensuring that near port communities, those who've been excluded, gain access. So since 2019, we've seen a little under $17 million in port resources invested in workforce development, with over 1,200 people trained in high demand living wage careers, like the pre-apprenticeships we fund, which again, you'll hear about from Christina, and over 3,000 people trained in job readiness and career advancement opportunities, mostly here at the airport through Port Jobs, which Gurmai will be speaking to. And then over 8,500 people since 2019 placed into employment, mostly here at the airport. And we could not have done this alone in the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion without incredibly strong partnerships across the port departments and all the amazing folks who make it happen. And we're going to give you a few examples of those partnerships of shared vision, shared success. So next slide, please. The first example is in maritime. So under your leadership and your vision, the port seeded Maritime High School, right? Several years ago. I know we're all looking forward to that first graduating class here in a few weeks. But this year, Port of Seattle, through our Talent Connections team and HR, was able to hire 10 Maritime High School interns to come here and work for the port. And they took on an issue that's been challenging for us to figure out how to solve. We want to provide career awareness opportunities for young people across our county. We'd love for them to come tour all of our facilities. And marine maintenance in particular has been stretched thin. They've offered many tours. They'll continue to do it, but wanted to be able to do more. So they partnered with the Maritime High School interns. The interns developed videos. You may have seen some of them on LinkedIn or our websites to highlight a number of occupations in marine maintenance. And so they also developed a game and some curriculum that's being finalized, and we're sharing it throughout the region with schools. But in workforce development, our team was already in partnership with the Washington Alliance for Better School to develop a curriculum for after-school programming that educators and community members could provide to elementary school and middle school students to incorporate port-related occupations into that after-school programming. So we've shared those videos with the Washington Alliance for Better Schools. They'll be implementing them throughout the state and also sharing them with parents and other caregivers of these young people so they can learn about port-related careers as well. So there's an example of leveraging all of our shared work to a greater impact. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to speak to 2024. This slide showcases that of our 2024 investments in workforce development, the majority served near port communities. The darker the color of the zip code, the more folks served with our investments in workforce development. And you can see there the top 5 zip codes of folks served. 78% of those served with the investments live in low equity communities in King County. Next slide, please. Also in 2024, we made similar levels of investments. I do want to note that we saw a decrease in the number of job placements in 24 and job trainings. And so why is that? I think there's a number of factors. One being just sort of the regional shift in hiring. When we came out of COVID 22 and you saw that big ramp up in hiring in 23, I'm not an economist, but I can say by looking at regional economic data that there has been a cooling off of hiring in 2024, especially towards the end of the year. We saw that at SEA. We've seen it in construction. Construction lost over 5,000 jobs in the Seattle metro area between February of 24 to 25. So there's been a regional cooling, and it also is in regards to when you have such a huge spike from 22 to 23 in hiring, eventually folks stay in their positions and you're going to level off. That said, we have a number of plans underway for how we continue to have greater impact in our communities with these investments. I would also note that at SEA in particular, the cyber attack and a few construction closures had a small impact on hiring as well. All right, next slide, please. So what are our plans underway to have continued impact in our communities with these workforce investments? Well, we need to continue doing a lot of what we already do, which is strong partnerships internally with other public agencies, with our community partners. We've done so much to offer such a breadth of workforce development services, from folks just learning about career occupations, port occupations, to supporting folks in advancement. And we've seen such a great outcome in terms of serving those who've been structurally excluded. Not to mention all the upskilling work happening here at the airport, which I'll speak to in a minute. But there's lots of ways we can grow. So we're doing some work internally to strengthen our own house in partnership with Central Procurement Office, internal audit. I'll speak to that in a minute. But what you're going to hear the most about in the rest of this presentation is using our strategic investments to provide more tailored services to individuals, partnering more with employers so that they're at the table in the planning phase to ensure we're training folks to meet their employment demand, and then also, again, planning for jobs of the future. Last but definitely not least, really needing to focus even more on the commitments we've already made in the Duwamish Valley with Priority Hire with our Muckleshoot and Suquamish partners. Next slide, please. So to dive into a few of those strategies moving forward in more detail, we see in terms of our own investments that we can have greater community outcomes with better clarity for our partners, more technical assistance for our community partners, the nonprofits that provide most of these services, increased program oversight in a strengths-based, community-informed way, and then also more efficient contract management. So we're again working with Central Procurement Office and internal audit on those strategies. And I would just say we're as strong in our investments as we are in our procurement team. So as you're entering budget season, thinking about resources, our friends in Central Procurement Office, I know, could use some more support. Next slide, please. So before I go into each of the sectors that we're making investments in, I'm going to turn it over to Gurmai Warku to share a little bit about his story. Gurmai?
Thank you, Anna. Thank you, commissioners. And my name is Gurmai, and I'm happy to be here today to share my story with you. And I'm currently working at the Port of Seattle with an airfield operations specialist. But my journey started at the airport as a wheelchair attendant. For that moment, I know I can be more than that, just pushing wheelchairs. But I'm grateful. Thank you for the Port of Seattle for your leadership in the Port of Jobs, the opportunity to open here at the airport with Highline Community College and Green River Colleges to get access to learn here at Airport University here. So I was one of the students over there and taking many classes. I took criminal justice classes, hospitality tourism management, customer service, computer science classes. And then last to summer 2018, I graduated with Highline Community College, with Airport University, with criminal justice and hospitality tourism management, dual associate degrees. That was my focus, but I didn't stop, commissioners. I also continue to learn to complete 4 short-term certificates with Introduction to Homeland Security and Aviation, a Private Security Academy. And I also completed with ACE, with Airport Certified Employee with Airport Operation AAA. So with that being said, I'm here today. Thank you for your support, for your leadership. Thank you for your help to build up this opportunity from here. We're working here and we're learning at the same time. I really appreciate it.
So Gurmai has grown his career at the airport now as a Port of Seattle employee. I got to meet him at the Bring Your Kids to Work Day and meet his oldest daughter, who's 9, oldest of 4. So many, the next generation is ready to come to work. She looked ready. So in aviation, Gurmai mentioned Port Jobs. They're our longest standing partner as a community investment that we've made here at the port. And this last year, they placed 1,200 people and provided so many different opportunities for these kinds of career advancement training that the Gurmai has taken. They also served 130 asylum seekers in this last year. South Seattle College, another partner, has continued their worker upskilling training through the Aviation Maintenance Technician Program and the brand new Ground Support Equipment Mechanic training, which launched in 2024 with a really great completion rate for a pilot, 83%. So you can see on this slide, I'm not going to go through all the details, but each dollar amount is the annual that's the 2024 investment we made in those organizations. So what's next? In aviation, we're getting going with Port Jobs on the Child Care Navigator scope to support existing SEA employees with finding childcare. And they're ramping up on that initiative. We have launched the taxi driver employment navigator work with International Rescue Committee. They're also getting geared up to get that started and offering it at the 160th Street rest stop for taxi drivers and offsite as well. And then thank you for your approval today in consent of the aviation security training pathway. We'll get a solicitation out and find a really solid training provider to support us in building out that pathway. And so next slide. In construction, you also have had such great leadership around the Priority Hire Initiative. You'll be hearing from our engineering partners later this year as they put their annual report together. But just a note here that after you developed this policy and we implemented the project labor agreement with setting expectations around contractors hiring apprentices and those who are pre-apprenticeship graduates, our office in OEDI funds pre-apprenticeship training and has resulted in 56 individuals that the port has funded in pre-apprenticeship landing on our Port of Seattle construction project since 2019. We'd love for those numbers to grow much larger. And so that's one reason we invited Christina to come and speak to her experience. And we're working with engineering on those strategies.
Hi, my name is Christina Vandermeer. I'm a second period apprentice in Local 196 Pile Drivers Union. I graduated the new trades rotation program in April of 2024. Before coming to ANU, I was stuck at a dead-end job and barely being able to support my 3 children. Coming to the program helped pave the path towards a career that I can comfortably support my family on now. And aside from getting knowledge on how to use basic hand and power tools, one of the best tools I got from the program was when we visited the Leidig yard and learned how to hustle work as a carpenter. In addition to all of this, the new program also provided me with direct entry into the Carpenters Union, and after graduation, I was an active member in less than 2 months. After this, I then took everything I learned and applied it to my first job, that being with Leidig on a Seattle public school job. Once that project was completed, I continued to hustle more work, landing a Port of Seattle job with Pacific Pile and Marine on Pier 66. From October of 2024 until March of this year, I strive to do my best with the company. On this job, I had the opportunity to learn how to drive pile, how to rig and signal a crane, and how to use a wide variety of different tools efficiently. Working the job with the port was an extremely beneficial experience as it widened my scope of knowledge in the field and also helped me gain the confidence in myself with being a brand new apprentice in the trades. Thank you for your time, and I hope to be on more projects with the Port of Seattle in the future.
Great. Thank you, Christina. Next slide, please. So we've made a number of investments in construction, ANU being one of our primary partners, and also with Urban League Pact, the carpenters, the ironworkers, pre-apprenticeship programs, and are looking forward to providing more tailored services and working more closely with employers through the ANU's Leadership Development Program. So we'll be looking for Christina to join that once she's got more experience as a pile driver apprentice. And that pilot cohort is currently underway with 9 journey level workers and apprentices enrolled. to prepare them for leadership opportunities, supervisory positions in construction. Next slide, please. Maritime, we started some new partnerships with the Sea Scouts and Core Plus Maritime. Sea Scouts had Youth Maritime Career Launch interns on the boat. Core Plus Maritime is career-connected learning in high schools. We're looking to expand that with a number of partnerships, including the Muckleshoot and the Puget Sound Skills Center. And then we'll be finishing out this year the Youth Maritime Career Launch pilot, and we'll be coming back to you in the fall with recommendations for how to continue to build on that pilot, hopefully opening it up to adults, offering more training supports, really embedding the maritime investments with employer-driven opportunities for folks. And then last but not least, Maritime High School saw a 10% increase in enrollment in this last school year, which is exciting. Next slide. Green Jobs, last but not least, will be continuing our partnership with King County and City of Seattle with Coalition for Climate Careers. And we came to you not too long ago to talk about our Duwamish Valley Career Navigator program. So we are in the process of hiring a community partner to provide, again, more tailored services to Duwamish Valley residents so that they can follow that career path that best meets their needs, their interests, and also partners with employers to make sure that they land in career paths, not just jobs. And so with that, next slide, we just want to thank all of our partners from 2024 and thank you all for, again, your leadership in making this all happen.
Thank you very much for the presentation. That was excellent. It's our turn to ask questions, make comments, colleagues. Commissioner Mohammed.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. That was very detailed, and both of your stories are inspiring, and I'm glad to hear that the port has become a place for you to find career opportunities. Airport University, that is a organization I was pretty fascinated by when I learned that happens here at the airport, and so it's great to hear those stories and all of the information you've provided. I have just a couple of questions. The port hired maritime high school interns. Was that an internship program that was dedicated for maritime high school students, or was that our regular internship program that those students applied into?
I don't want to speak on behalf of Talent Connections, but my understanding is that they've held 10 slots for aviation high school students and 10 slots for the maritime high school students.
That's wonderful. I love those internship programs and want to see them expand, so I was just curious. And then the other thing that I wanted to say that I noted here was curriculum development. So did we develop those curriculums and pass it along to the Washington Alliance for Better Schools?
We hired them to draft the curriculum based on input we gave them about occupations that are in demand in each of the 3 sectors, including green jobs. So they're going to be piloting this summer, and they're going to come back and get additional input from Port of Seattle staff across the agency this summer.
That's amazing. And so then those who are funded through like the South King County Impact Fund or the Maritime Youth Career Launch, will they have access to that curriculum as well? Like a nonprofit organization?
Sure. It's going to be publicly available curriculum, so anyone can use it. It's geared towards elementary and middle school students, but, it could have application in other settings.
I see. It's geared to younger folks.
Yeah, for the Washington Alliance for Better School, that curriculum is geared towards elementary and middle school. We also have Core Plus Maritime, which is building out curriculum for junior and senior level high schoolers.
And I can't remember exactly what the age range was. I think it's definitely not 25 for the Maritime Youth Career Launch Program. I think it's, 18?
Correct. 18 to 24.
Oh,
correct.
I would love to see something like that incorporated into the Maritime Youth Career Launch Program. I know like a lot of the nonprofit organizations, they all design their own sort of curriculum, and it's not really super streamlined, and some struggle with it because it's just a new area of information for them. And so it's great that there's a model now that maybe that they can replicate.
Definitely.
And then my last question, the Duwamish Valley Navigator
Mm-hmm.
position, is that going to be through like an RFP process?
Mm-hmm.
And so where can folks in the public who are interested in that find that information?
It has already been solicited. We got the word out through all of our community networks back in in April, and so we did post it on our website about future opportunities, and we made sure we connected with a lot of different community organizations to get the word out at the time. But if there's more that we should be doing to make sure you all are in the loop about those solicitations, I'm happy to take extra steps that we may not have thought of.
I just love to amplify it, and I'm sure even maybe folks who are listening would like that information. So thank you. The work that you're doing is very much aligned with what I believe the port's mission is spreading economic opportunity into community. And so I just really appreciate all the work that you all do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Felleman.
Thanks so much for the presentation and putting real faces to the work. It really, hearing from you directly is fascinating and inspiring. So really appreciate that. I was thinking about green jobs. I think about that a lot. And the idea that I believe I totally agree with, some of the basic foundations. If you can't be an electrician, you can't do your solar cells. And so they're foundational things. But I was then thinking about and then you have the dirt core for the kind of things that make me real happy. Mm-hmm. But the thing I was thinking about was, like the Coast Guard has like an environmental program, and they deal like with oil spill, and we have like global diving and salvage right there in the harbor, who I've spoken to in the past, and they've shown a receptivity, at least during its previous ownership. I think it might have changed hands, but that's a sort of a field where I know our executive director is rather familiar with, and the captains of the port are involved with a lot of stuff that's relevant, and it's also another career pathway in the military of sort. The other thing I wanted to know more about is, I've always been very much interested in seeing how much more of our tribal youth we can engage in this process, and I know Roxanne and you have done a lot of work to outreach, and I believe so has Core Plus. In fact, they have a very active program with Macaw all the way out there. And we're still trying to get, and I think Suquamish and some potential. You did mention, and I think Commissioner Cho and I had offered to be able to write a letter to tribal leadership to make sure that they know that we're making this outreach. And because I know the outreach is occurring, but I want to make sure that, teachers are busy. And if the council says, please make the time, that would help a lot versus saying another thing for me to do. So I still would like very much to at least be on record, so let the council know when we do our annual, MOU meetings that these programs have been underway, and let's not take credit for the hard work you're doing. You did mention something about a Muckleshoot program in collaboration. Was it with a Renton High School? What was that?
So the Puget Sound Skills Center, their marine science program, if you're familiar with that skills center, their marine science program has had a long-standing partnership with the Muckleshoot, and we are working with Core Plus Maritime. It's just in infancy stage of building out that partnership with the Puget Sound Skills Center so that they can offer STCW training, the curriculum that I mentioned to Commissioner Mohammed, and then partner ideally with the Muckleshoot to implement it in those schools as well. But it's in the early stages. To your earlier point about a letter, we're doing things now that I'm still fairly new, wanting to develop those relationships directly and figure out what are the best strategies that will work for all of us. And then I'm sure we can take you up on your offer for a letter.
Great. And just so folks know, STCW is a safety on board boats, and like you can't get on board a boat unless you have SDCW certification, whether it's fish boat or otherwise. So it is a foundational educational issue. So thank you for that work.
Yeah. Commissioner Calkins.
Thank you so much, Anna, for the great presentation. And also to hear your stories is really important for us to just understand what it means on for individuals who are actually doing these things and how successful it can be, which a lot of that is attributable to your grit. So you should take as much credit as any of us do for the success of these programs. I also, I think a fundamental value for us has been the rejuvenation of programs like let me just say broadly, apprenticeships. And it's an area where I think there's a great deal of bipartisan interest. And so while I know at the port we're struggling with some of our major differences with the current federal administration, this is an area where I think we can make real headway over the next 4 years. And so I really want us to lean into these examples of successes and how do we scale them, and also how do we translate them into new areas of work that are becoming more and more important for us. So, building around existing trades, but also recognizing that there are emerging areas of skilled work that we're going to need to expand. And so, from the standpoint of like late high school and post-secondary school, I think, these programs, to the extent that the port can be continue to support them, I think that's important. And a key part of that will be, and I don't know if Eric Schinfeld is still here, but is figuring out how, if they're going to take $3 billion from Harvard and give it to trade schools, how do we make sure they go to the trade schools that we're supporting already? The other thing I would say is, and I just really want to emphasize, Anna, the point you made earlier about how there are these kind of early awareness and exploration programs, and how vital that is for so many of these folks who may not even have awareness of these careers. And it almost feels hackneyed to say it, but getting in front of kids and their parents when they're in second grade and third grade so that they understand you could be a ferry captain and make lots of money and get to go home at night. But that's not a traditional educational pathway. It's a different approach than, what in most cases you're going to hear from your junior high or high school counselor. And then, of course, continuing to work to expand secondary options for kids who want to do stuff. And this has become a really key understanding for me about where we have failed young people and what we need to do to offer them that. And the more experience I have with it, the more convinced I am that experiential education, in other words, not doing what I'm doing right now, sitting behind a desk, but actually getting out and doing hands-on work, is not only better for your job prospects in the future, it's better for your brain. You just learn better when you're doing it. And I think it also reflects the nature of today's work, which is that it is almost always collaborative. There are very few jobs left that require that you just sit quietly by yourself and do it. And those jobs are the first ones that are going to go away with AI. So whereas welding and other skilled trades, those have a long future in spite of the coming of our AI overlords. So hugely grateful for the work that you guys are doing. I also want to say I've had the opportunity to accept an award on behalf of the port recently at the Washington Alliance for Better Schools. I've been at other events where our programs have been highlighted time and time again. What everyone says is we love working with the folks at the port who lead these missions. And Anna, your name comes up all the time. Luis, you are a godfather in this program, and we are super grateful for all the work you've done. And now on into your other endeavors. But for me, every dollar we spend towards these efforts through the amazing work of our staff is well worth the expense.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know what more I can say to pile on to what's already been said by my colleagues, but, I think I just want to express how much I share the sentiment that this is at the core of what we do as an institution. We exist as an economic development agency, which means we exist to create jobs. And the fact that we have, or the fact that we're putting our money where our mouth is and investing in workforce development is not just a statement of our values, but also a demonstration of how effective this can be. And we have extraordinary examples of that here today, testifying before us. And it is what is going to maintain our status as a healthy organization going into the future, because we all know beyond, just the fact that it's our mission, it's mission critical to us as an organization to continue to build up those who have the skills to keep this institution running at the pace that it is. So I just want to thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. This really is at the core of what we stand for and what we need to be doing, not just for ourselves, but also as part of our mission. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also just like to thank you and commend you for this presentation. It's not easy to fit in this subject into a 15-minute presentation when it's cornerstone to what we're doing as a port, right? It's in our mission that we're doing economic development, and the workforce development aspect is, I think, the biggest and most important charge that we face. Order, please. Thanks, colleagues. So, Christina, you have 3 kids, and Gurmai, you have 4 children. And I love what you said about working and learning at the same time, and how critical education and is on the front end to the outcomes on the other end of that. You've said so many positive things about your experience, but I'm actually going to invite you to give us constructive criticism. You've told us what's working well, and I value that. What more or what else could we do that would support you and people like you to succeed? Start with Fred.
Well, I don't have that much, but I would say I talked with Hannah the other day as well. Working at the airport is working like airport is representative just the whole America. So a lot of people come here with a diverse environment. A lot of people come in here at the port of jobs at the same time. But again, they need, if you as a leadership, they need more support. That I talked to Anna the other day. Folks that come in here, English is the second languages. They need more resources to learn those English. It's not only, criminal justice or any other classes with career path with deviations. That's wonderful. But on the other hand, more resources, more your support. I understand you guys doing a lot, but again, if you can get more people would be happy and appreciated that.
Thank you, Gurmai. What do you think, Christina?
I wish I had a little bit of criticism, but the whole program has completely changed my life, and it's been all good, really. Besides, I'm been laid off for the last month. That's only and it's kind of hard to find work right now. But besides that, everything you guys did, it's been amazing for me. So
thank you for that. So, in the presentation, I heard you demonstrate the trend that regionally that hiring is actually going down now. Do we expect that, or at least between the last 2 fiscal years? So, do we anticipate that trend to continue?
Well, it really was towards the end of 2024. That was the data I was looking at from Employment Security Department. And so in conversations like with Port Jobs just last week, they've seen actually an upward trajectory in the first quarter of 2025. So your question is a very important one, and I wish I could answer it. But the economic roller coaster that we're on is really difficult for me to anticipate. I can say that if interest rates go down, we'll see more construction. But there really is no crystal ball.
Yeah. How many different departments at the Port of Seattle are involved with workforce development?
I mean, pretty much every department. We partner with external relations and the Duwamish. We partner, like I already mentioned, a number of departments, but also maritime heavily, aviation, of course, all of our friends in finance, just literally, I can't think of a team or department that doesn't partner with office.
I think that it's really critical to lift up. Every single department has a role to play in workforce development, not just for hiring internally, but facilitating a pipeline of jobs. And I love that this presentation demonstrated the different points of entry. When we first took office years ago, we were trying to identify points where we could leak people, like you train them up, how do you place them, and then how do you retain them? And so sort of seeing the holistic picture here of what wraparound support looks like to equip and then retain talent is really, I think, an important view to take. So thank you for presenting it for us here. You mentioned that we served 130 asylum seekers last year. I am wondering, how do we identify those participants?
It was a partnership with Port Jobs through the asylum seeker initiatives based at Riverton. They started by going into the Riverton community and recruiting there, but not many folks at the time had the ability to work in the United States. And so once those folks have been distributed throughout the county, but Port Jobs has stayed in touch with them to support them when they had the ability to come work at the airport. So did that answer your question?
Sure. And then slide 14 demonstrates our 2024 partners. Is this our 2024 partners in workforce development generally? Can you talk about what
correct
partnership means?
Yes. So what I'm speaking to are the investments we make outside of the South King County Community Impact Fund. So these are the partners that we invested in either directly or as sub consultants in some cases throughout 2024 in those three sectors. And so, for example, like Urban League, working with them in construction and in maritime. But most of them in a particular single contract.
And I'm wondering, because most of these partners, from a glance, seem like they're actual employers with a few exceptions. There are some community-based organizations here, but what about folks like, REWA or ACRS or PICA Washington, who, the workforce development isn't built in necessarily to what they're doing, because in the hierarchy of needs, they're looking at housing stability and other things, but it could be a part of what they do. They're reaching more diverse or smaller communities. How are community-based organizations worked into our workforce development projects?
Yeah, that's a great question. So because a number of the services we're offering now are looking at like more tailored services to meet individual needs, we are looking at really experienced organizations who've done career navigation and have those employer relationships. And so we have opportunities in some upcoming solicits. Well, for example, like I mentioned, now with taxi drivers, that's International Rescue Committee. We'll be expanding partnerships with the Duwamish Valley Career Navigator. But in terms of those opportunities, they're really specific to the need. And so if it isn't an organization that has a lot of experience with employment services, then we're working on models, and you'll be hearing more about it in our strategic planning, of trying to marry up organizations that have more experience with those that may have less in career services. You're going to be hearing, you heard about this as well with the South King County Community Impact Fund, right? That's an area where organizations who may have less experience offering career services will be more successful in those competitive solicitations, but we are planning to there's a word better than forced marriages, but working, encouraging through our solicitations that the more experienced organizations really do have solid commitments in community partnerships with organizations like the ones you mentioned.
Awesome.
Does that make sense?
Thank you very much. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the work that you and folks Portwide are doing to support access to jobs throughout our region. Do I have any other questions or comments from my colleagues? All right, well, seeing none, I'd like to thank and excuse the panel. Congratulations on your graduation from Anu. And we can move forward in the agenda. Clerk Hart, please read it in the next item into the record. Executive Director Metric will introduce it.
Thank you. This is agenda item 11B, SCA Stakeholder Advisory Roundtable START Annual Report.
Commissioners, I'm pleased to present to you the annual report on the SCA Stakeholder Advisory Roundtable, or START. START continues to play an essential role to enhance cooperation between the Port and the Highline Forum member cities of Sea-Tac, Burien, Des Moines, Normandy Park, Tukwila, and Federal Way. Alaska and Delta Airlines also serve on the START, and the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, provides agency expertise. For the last year, START has been focused on implementing tangible solutions that address aircraft noise and emissions issues, as well as advocacy at the state and federal level, and just we say for this timing for this item is 30 minutes that we have scheduled for presentation and discussion. So the presenters this afternoon are Marco Milanese, Senior Community Engagement Manager, External Relations, Eric Shinfield, Manager of Federal and International Government Relations, and Andres Mentia, START's facilitator and partner at Uncommon Bridges. So I'll turn over to Andres, I believe.
You don't look like Andres. Is he online? Okay, welcome. So Andres is virtual today.
Yeah, and confirming that you could see me okay and hear me.
We have visual now, yes.
Great. Well, thank you, Commissioners and Executive Director Metric, for the opportunity today to provide an update on START, the SCA Stakeholder Advisory Roundtable, and its progress in both 2024 and 2025. My name is Andres Mantilla. I am START's facilitator. I am also a partner at Uncommon Bridges, a Seattle-based consulting firm that helps organizations like your own facilitate through community and stakeholder conversations. START's chair, Arif Gauss, and START's alternate chair, Sarah Cox, were not available for today's presentation, and so they asked that I step in to lead off the discussion and presentation of today's annual report. I'm joined today for the annual report discussion by Eric Shinfield, Senior Federal Relations Manager with the Port of Seattle, and Marco Milanese, Senior Community Engagement Manager with the Port of Seattle. We can go to the next slide. I wanted to begin today's presentation with a quick overview of START, including its purpose and its structure. And then Marco and Eric will cover the programs and initiatives that START's Aviation Noise Working Group and its Policy Working Group have focused on in 2024 and for the first half of 2025. And then we'll wrap up and be available to answer your questions. Next slide. Cognizant of SDA's airport operations and location within a dense residential and commercial area in the Puget Sound, the Port of Seattle has built relationships with community and local cities that strive to foster trust, accountability, and collaboration. An important component of that commitment was the creation of START in early 2018 under Lance Little's leadership. Go to the next slide. Working in close coordination with leaders from the 6 Highline Forum member cities of Sea-Tac, Burien, Des Moines, Normandy Park, Tukwila, and Federal Way, the Port of Seattle and its partners developed START with the intention to share information, collaborate, and achieve results. START provides the Port of Seattle with a dedicated forum for discussing and tackling airport-related issues of most relevance to Highline Forum member cities and their residents. Next slide. So the way it works is that each city designates 3 members to serve on the START. 2 community representatives and a city representative who are joined by representatives from Alaska Airlines, Delta Airlines, an air cargo operator, and then port staff. The Federal Aviation Administration also attends in an ex officio role to provide agency expertise. With Lance's departure, Arif, the airport's interim managing director, will serve as START's new chair. Meetings are typically every other month, and they're facilitated, as I mentioned, by me with assistance from my colleague Cheryl Swab, again from Uncommon Bridges, the Seattle-based organizational development, engagement, and policy consulting firm. START's steering committee provides support, guidance, and strategic direction for START. The port, the 6 cities, and 2 airlines are all represented on the steering committee. And then the steering committee decides and has purview over the size and extent of START's membership, the areas of focus for what START should be discussing, and specifically what to include on START meeting agendas, and any change on how START operates as an advisory roundtable. Importantly, consensus-based guidance is what shapes all decisions taken by START's steering committee and by its 2 working groups and START itself. The Port of Seattle provides START with staff support and technical analysis and expertise. However, the Port is also bound by START's consensus-based approach and cannot take unilateral action on START to shape agendas or areas of focus or how to change how START operates, including membership. START created 2 working groups to empower START's members to work on identified priorities between the bigger START meetings. The first, the Aviation Noise Working Group, and the second, the Policy Working Group, previously known as the Federal Policy Working Group. And START's major accomplishments are primarily the results of efforts initiated by these 2 working groups. And so with the next slide, I can turn it over to Marco to get into more specifics.
Thank you, Andres. The name again is Marco Milanese, and I am the Community Engagement Manager here at the airport. And thank you, Commission, and thank you, Executive Director Metric, for this opportunity. Since its creation, START's Aviation Noise Working Group has focused on prioritizing and exploring potential near-term actions to reduce and prevent aviation noise. In 2024 and 2025, the group continued its work on the Aviation Near-Term Noise Action Agenda, which includes several programs and efforts intended to provide aviation noise relief to those 6 Highline Forum member cities, but with more of a focus on results monitoring, considering potential refinements, and promoting the agenda's outcomes both to external and external audiences. Next slide. Before I dive into 2024 and 2025, let me quickly recap some of the work of the Aviation Noise Work Group from previous years. Launched in 2019, the Late Night Noise Limitation Program is a voluntary effort to reduce late night noise by incentivizing air carriers to fly at less noise-sensitive hours or to transition to quieter aircraft. The program includes regular reporting each quarter to START, to the air carriers and other external audiences on all airline noise exceedances above an established noise threshold in the late night hours. EVA Air and FedEx Express, there are 2 carriers the port staff met with as part of the program's outreach, targeting air carriers that had the most late night noise exceedances, did eventually incorporate newer, quieter aircraft into their fleets. But as we know, aircraft fleets go through frequent change, and so port staff continue to meet with air carriers regularly about late night noise. In 2024, port staff met with China Airlines Cargo to urge their continued transition to the quieter 777, and with EVA Air to urge greater use of the quieter 787. The informal runway use plan minimizes use of the 3rd runway during late night hours, and late night operations on the 3rd runway have dropped dramatically since implementation of that plan back in 2019. Prior to that runway use plan, the 3rd runway averaged roughly 12 to 13 operations during the late night hours. Those were mostly landings. And in 2023, the average was less than 2 operations per late night. In 2024, the average grew primarily due to some nighttime runway construction work that was happening on the other runways that then pushed more operations to that 3rd runway. However, through May of this year, the average number of late night operations on the 3rd runway dropped to 2.8, representing a significant improvement over the previous year. Upon the working group's urging, the port provides up-to-date, accessible, and detailed information on all noise complaints and comments submitted by the public. Online monthly reporting began in June of 2020, and reports are provided at all working group meetings and on the port's website. Reverse thrust is used by pilots to decelerate aircraft upon landing. It also is an identified source of ground noise at the airport. So in coordination with the FAA, with the air carriers, and with members of the working group, updated voluntary SCA language discouraging the use of reverse thrust beyond what is necessary was implemented in early 2023. Continuous taxi to takeoffs, which is also known as rolling takeoffs, have less of a noise footprint than traditional takeoffs that require aircraft to power up after coming to a complete stop. Again, in coordination with the FAA, with the air carriers, and with members of the working group, voluntary SCA language promoting continuous taxi to takeoffs was enacted in mid-2023. Next slide. Turning to 2024 and 2025, the working group continues to finalize voluntary language to provide aviation noise relief to those highline forum member cities. Single-engine taxiing is an established practice with many air carriers here at SCA, and though it has a modest effect on reducing noise, it does have a measurable effect on reducing aircraft emissions. And so again, in coordination with the FAA, the air carriers, and the members of the working group, voluntary SCA language promoting its use was enacted at the end of 2024. Directed by the Port Commission, Port staff developed and implemented a comprehensive analysis of single-family homes that had previously received a port-funded noise insulation package. The working group was briefed throughout that assessment with multiple opportunities to ask questions and provide input. And in early 2025, the Port's re-insulation pilot program was announced, and the working group was one of the first external audiences to receive a preview of that new program. Finally, in 2024, the working group began participating on the SCA Part 150 Noise Studies Technical Review Committee. A Part 150 noise study is required by the FAA to update airport noise programs and establish eligibility for FAA grant funds at an airport. And airports typically stand up a technical review committee during this study and task it with providing technical input and guidance throughout the life of that study. And along with appointed land use planners, the working group members participated on that technical review committee, and 2 of the 2024 working group meetings included substantial agenda time dedicated to that Part 150 study. Serving on that technical review committee, also known as the TRC, offers working group members a significant opportunity to influence current aviation noise reduction and prevention programs and recommend new approaches. The working group's next meeting is in early June and will be primarily focused on the Part 150 study, and we expect a heavier focus on that study at future working group meetings into the rest of 2025 and into 2026. And I'll turn things over to Eric Schinfeld.
All right, Commissioners, Eric Schinfeld, Senior Manager of Federal Government Relations for the Port of Seattle. I'm one of the staff for the Policy Working Group. Next slide, please. As you know, the Policy Working Group focuses on changing federal policies and regulations that can provide more flexibilities, more resources, more tools to address the community concerns around aircraft noise and emissions. And we really believe that we are one of the only airports in the country that has brought together community and the airport to develop a shared federal policy agenda. In fact, we're so proud of that work and have seen such great results from that work that we actually changed the name of this group, which used to be called the Federal Policy Working Group, to now the Policy Working Group, because we have done a similar process over the past year with state policy as well, developing a shared cities and port state policy agenda and implementing that at the state legislative level. We'll talk a little bit more as we go forward here. Next slide, please. I want to talk again just about 2024. It feels like about 1,000 years ago that President Biden in May 2024 signed the FAA Reauthorization Act. And so we'll talk about that ancient history just for a second, because it really truly was such an incredible, not only achievement, but specifically a demonstration of the power of collective action. In 2023, we developed our shared port cities federal policy agenda. We took the first ever port cities DC fly-in to meet with our delegation, to meet with the FAA, and the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. When that bill was finally signed, the FAA Reauthorization Act, 4 of our 7 shared priorities were written into law. And that is an incredible achievement. And again, not because of the staff work, but because of the symbol and the demonstration of the power that it is for the cities and the port to stand shoulder to shoulder, saying the same things, talking about the same priorities, which allows our federal delegation to really focus on those priorities and help carry them across the finish line. And you can see those 4 priorities. I'll call out one in particular, which is instituting both a deadline and a stakeholder advisory group for FAA action on the noise policy review, which is, to remind everybody, the noise policy review is the FAA's process to look at, is the 65 DNL the right noise standard? Should it be replaced? Should it be added to? Should it be altered in some way? And so we really wanted to make sure that that wasn't just a study that sat on a shelf, but it had a specific deadline. It had input from key communities, including airport communities, airports, airlines, other federal agencies, et cetera, and really continuing to work towards that and make sure that we get really solid recommendations that go to Congress for action on that question of the 65 DNL. We will continue in 2025 to work on not only making sure that these things still do happen, it is a new federal administration, but these are laws that are on the books, and by law, these things do need to happen. And so we'll continue to push to make sure these things happen, as well as to make sure that the 3 things that we did not get into the 2024 FAA reauthorization bill continue to make progress. And I want to say one of those is sustainable aviation fuel. We had a huge victory last week when the U.S. House of Representatives, in its quote-unquote one big beautiful bill, got rid of every single clean energy tax credit except for the tax credit for sustainable aviation fuel, and in fact extended that SAF tax credit to 2031. That's not all our work, but just something that we've been working with many others on. Similarly, I want to give all the credit in the world to Senator Murray and Representative Smith, who are continuing to carry the ball on federal funding of secondary noise insulation, repair and replacement. We do have a strategy to continue to try and actually implement that policy and get it signed into law this year. Believe it or not, I know that Congress doesn't sign a lot of bills, but we actually do think that there's a real chance this year, especially given the incredible strength and leadership of those 2 members of our delegation and many others as well. So that's what we've been doing on the federal policy side. I will say that obviously there's a lot happening in D.C. right now, and it is right now on the very partisan side of things. Republicans are controlling the House and the Senate and the White House. They are moving legislation right now that is purely partisan. There will be no Democratic votes for it. But we do think that there are some things we can still do even in this environment. I mentioned just trying alone to implement some of the things that are already on the books and make sure they don't get forgotten about, make sure that we continue to make progress on some of those other things. So we are thinking about whether or not either in the end of this year or maybe in 2026, that next DC fly-in is an appropriate conversation. And so we'll be getting back to you very quickly with what we think is probably the right timing on that TBD right now. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned, we do now also have a state legislative agenda. I'm going to call up John Flanagan, our manager of state government relations. We did this year not only create that first ever state policy agenda shared between the port and the cities, but also on February 12th led the first ever Start Olympia Day, where we brought both port and city representatives, including elected officials, to Olympia to advocate on these policies, again with the same theory that talking together with shared priorities, standing shoulder to shoulder has an impact. And John is just going to give you a very brief update on some of our progress during the state legislative session that ended recently on some of these priorities.
Sure. Thanks, Eric. First of all, that Olympia Start Lobby Day, which Eric mentioned, we've already been referring to as the first annual. So we're excited to go back to Olympia next year, bring hopefully a larger coalition, and do some front-loaded work this summer to make sure that our joint advocacy is successful and that we are able to have a large presence on that day. I guess I'll start with the bad news first. As I mentioned to you all, pre-session headed into what was probably the toughest fiscal environment we've had at the state legislature in memory. $12 billion hole is a quick reminder that passed a balanced budget technically, which is great. There were some cuts. So that said, the first priority there, effectively implementing our noise insulation repair and replace program, the $1 million that we were successful in securing last year ended up being transferred back into the state general fund. The main reason for that being and we had a long conversation with the Department of Commerce about this as well. The legislative intent for that was always to spend the money on actual repairs of actual homes to fix whether it's windows or doors or walls or whatever. And we came to a point where we were not quite ready to spend it on those kinds of repairs, and we were thinking about trying to move forward with a rush job, essentially, on a grant from Commerce to get us the money quickly, but we would have ended up spending it on surveys and all of the things that we're doing now with the port's resources. Long story short, it made more sense for that to go back to the general fund, according to the Department of Commerce and the legislators that were working on this. Everything else, we made pretty substantial progress this year. So bullet number 2 there, that's mainly about the Commercial Aviation Work Group, which was funded to continue its work. RF Gauss is our representative there. They have another meeting coming up, I believe, this week at some point, actually. Long story short, they're going to get another year of work done, and they have some additional legislative direction as to how they are going to conduct that work, timelines, things like that. We had some good defense of things that are happening on air quality. I'll skip over that for now, and I'll stop here and just add that we got an additional, I think, $16 million overall for SAF projects. That includes mostly funding that's going up to the production and research facility at Payne Field, but then lots of things happening in the R&D space, and then a couple things happening on the capital side, hopefully, to push forward SAF infrastructure.
And just to be clear, we the port did not get the $16 million. We successfully lobbied for the state to appropriate that to various projects, including the Payne Field project. So, next slide, please. So, Andres, I think this is back to you.
So thank you, Commissioners and Executive Director Metric, for providing us with the opportunity to present today. In addition, thank you to everyone who played the role on START and makes all of this possible. I would particularly like to call out community and city members who represent their cities in all of these meetings and conversations and their fellow residents' interests on START. I've witnessed firsthand that they serve on START because of their deep commitment to public service and their deep love of their communities and wanting to generally tackle the issues facing their cities. So Commissioners, Executive Metric, please let us know if you have any questions regarding anything in the presentation.
Thank you very much. That was a very succinct presentation. You know, months and months and months of blood, sweat, and tears, and I appreciate your use of the phrase "long story short" because there's been so much that's gone into this. I'm going to turn to my colleagues to ask questions. Commissioner Mohammed.
Thank you for the presentation and for all the work that goes into the START committee. In particular, I really appreciate the policy work group and what you all have done with that. Eric, you're right. I think when the port and the near airport cities are working together and have a shared priority, it does help move the needle forward. Going to that DC fly-in first trip, I saw that with not only our members of Congress, our delegation being surprised that we were in the room together, the port and those local cities, but also even members from other states looking to our model and saying that, you know, being able to see the ports and cities work together and having a shared policy vision and mission really does help change policy, and we saw that happen with the FAA reauthorization bill and our priorities being included in that. So I appreciate that, and it's great that you all have replicated a similar version at the state level. I think that's going to have its own impacts. I did have a question about the $1 million that the state has essentially taken back because also we weren't prepared to do exactly what it is that they were suggesting. So do we expect to see some of the legislators make that request in future sessions? Is that the plan?
Simple answer, yes.
Okay. Do we have do we know, is it just next session?
We've started some of those conversations, but it's kind of up to how some of the survey results go and how the implementation of our own noise program goes. I mean, at this stage, from my understanding, we still have a number of appropriated resources that this commission has put into that project as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think the work will continue with or without those state fundings, but of course, any additional dollars helps. The other question that I have, and I'm sure probably all my colleagues have, is somebody help me understand what is going on with the START meetings as far as moving from webinar to
No, other way.
or now it's what? Yeah, either way. Is it Zoom? Is it a webinar version where folks are feeling like they cannot participate? Was that a recommendation that came from the switch, whatever the switch was? Was that the recommendation that came from the START members?
Sure. We've used Zoom from the beginning with START, and it's just kind of when COVID first hit, Zoom was just the way that we went with. Any decisions about how START manages a meeting is something that's made by START steering committee. And so over time, we've asked for ways to improve or make changes to the way the meetings happen virtually and in person. And the steering committee has always been in consensus agreement on how those meetings should operate. And we've asked a few times if there'd be interest in returning to an in-person experience or some sort of hybrid, but the desire has always been to keep it online using that Zoom seminar format process, which does keep some separation between the membership and the audience. And I think initially there was some confusion when people who weren't members of START were showing up on screens, and maybe a facilitator who was new to the process or someone else would call them out to with a question or something like that. And so the START membership wanted a clearer line between who's a member and who's in that virtual audience. And virtual audience members are allowed to give public comment. It just comes at the end of the meeting.
Why do you guys choose to have the public comment come at the end of the meeting and not the beginning of the meeting? Similar to
Initially, it was at the beginning of the meeting, but the steering committee made a decision to put it at the end, very early on.
And specifically, people wanted to comment on what they heard during the meeting. And so, when they were giving public comment at the beginning, then one of the presenters would actually say something, and then the person in the audience would want to respond to that. And so when it's at the end, it allows them to respond to what the actual content of the meeting was.
And then what does the START steering committee do with those comments, or what do staff do with those comments? How is that comment part of the deliberation process for the committee or for our staff?
Much like the commission meetings, we also get written comment as well too. So all oral comments given at meetings and written comments given at meetings are put into the summary document that's provided on START's webpage, which is part of the port's website. So all those comments are always there so people can view them and read what other folks have said at those meetings.
And then do you have like a number, like an amount of people who have reached out sharing that they're having a hard time with this webinar version?
We've received just a few comments from some residents in Vashon, but that's as much as I know in terms of the reaction we've gotten from people watching.
Okay, and then my last question is, has the steering committee members reviewed the Vashon community members who've advocated to the county council to try to get a seat at the table through START? Is there going to be a decision made on that? Is that being considered?
So we, the staff, actually made that recommendation to the steering committee. We said we believe that Councilmember Mosqueda should be included in the working group meetings, her staff specifically, that she would, as the public comment said earlier, be able to provide not only speaking on behalf of Vashon, but there are actually a number of unincorporated areas much closer to the airport, near Federal Way, near Burien, et cetera. And so we, the staff, put that to the steering committee and said, we would like you to approve this addition. The steering committee did not approve that addition, and they had a number of reasons for that. One being, I think, a sort of where does this end, type of slippery slope argument of if you have one single King County council member, what happens if another King County council member comes and says they want to be part of it? Why not a state legislator, whatever. So that was one of the things, and a couple other reasons as well. So I think I will say that was not the response we were hoping for. This was the staff recommendation to make that change. We were not successful that time, and so we're we are still at the drawing board, Marco and I and some of the other noise program staff feeling like, okay, how can we bring this back in a way that is going to be successful? You know, there are lots of pros and cons of the consensus-based steering committee model. Some good things where we're all in agreement and we're working together, some more challenging things where we have an idea that other people don't agree with. So we have not given up on that. We are working very hard. We actually think there are some things we can do, not only in terms of START, but specifically actual substantive conversations we can have directly with Vashon to try and move the needle on some of their concerns. So I will tell you from the staff level, this is a priority. We are really trying to make a difference. We hear the concerns. We take them seriously. We want to make progress. That specific proposal was not approved, and so we're continuing at it.
Thank you for that information, and I'm glad to hear that it is a priority, and I look forward to future updates. Thank you for the time.
Commissioner Fellman.
Thank you. I really appreciate getting these updates. And I think one of the things I've asked in the past is you have all these data. You know, you say there's this late flights than last year, nighttime improvements and all that. Show us the data. You know, it's like great accomplishments, and I really appreciate it. And you sort of listed the night flight issue is one of those real antagonistic ones that we always hear from community about. And you sort of listed it as, I don't know, was it accomplishments, or it sounded like the box had been checked, that there was been there, done that. And sorry for this casualness, but this is an ongoing program, right? You still have China Air, right? You still have others. And I'm really glad to hear that the mix for the other cargo flights are improving. But, you know, when you say a mix, it's obviously not all there. And we've been talking about this a long time, and I've always said, like, let's deploy the commission. Let's go, for the domestic ones, let's go and elevate that. And I mean, we go to China also, and I just would like to make sure they understand how important it is, and how, to your point, just changing the plane rather than with the international stuff trying to mess with the schedule. It's just like one of those simple things that they would be so easy for the community to notice, and really appreciate that.
If I could comment, your idea is something similar that we heard at our last in-person planning session for START, where they're thinking about it'd be helpful to have some sort of a data dashboard that lists the various programs and where we are with each of them. And so it's something that we are exploring on the port's website, where that information can be just in one spot. But we also got some good news as well, too, about you mentioned the air carriers. We heard recently that China Airlines Cargo, that does most of the cherry deliveries into the summer, that they are moving almost primarily to 777s from a 747, which has a huge noise improvement. And so we were talking about maybe we can get some sort of thank you letter from Commissioner and others to thank China Airlines Cargo for making that type of move. But we'll continue to be vigilant and track all the carriers to make sure that as we see improvements, we thank them, and when we don't see improvements, we remind them that we would like to see them.
But the fact that they're carrying our cherries on top of it, that's like a cherry on top. That sounds like a really good letter to write. It would be great fun. But, you know, I came, the day I arrived at the port, like one of my first meetings was Lance's first day. We were at the going away for the previous airport director. And I said to Lance, I go, I'd been around a little bit. I got earfuls. Like, it was as if the third runway was yesterday. And I go, Lance, you know, I hope you're prepared to address community concerns, because this is part of a growing airport. And he basically immediately turned, well, do you have a community committee? I mean, like, and I go, didn't you just come from Houston? You know, and like, you know, I didn't know they did community meetings. But this whole idea of START was like something that he had like right out of the gates. And I'm forever appreciative of that effort. Last thing, though, the community really appreciates it, but we're hearing from Vashon community every meeting, and certainly don't appreciate it. One of the things that just is surprising to me, we know, and it's kind of interesting to me, that they were having problems with the online thing. It's probably one of the most technically advanced person we've ever had testify is telling us there's a technical problem. It seems worth looking into, but with the focus on the Part 150 study coming up, that this seems much bigger than just the Highline community, right? This is a broadly interesting thing. And so I guess if we could find a way, since this is an official process, that, I would like to see, I appreciate staff and your efforts that this is not, you're not noticing this, but I would like the commission to be able to make sure that the Highline community, we're chairing this body, right? We're organizing the one. We don't count all the votes, right? But we certainly are convening. The reason why the FAA is there, the reason why the airlines are there, is because we're there, right? And so we only have one vote, but we do have the bully pulpit. And I think there's elected officials there that want to know how important it is to us. But I do believe that the 150 study does provide an avenue to have at least that focus. And to tell you the truth, for them not to have the benefit of David's expertise is kind of shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, so I'll just say we 1,000% agree with you, Commissioner. The Part 150 is an incredible opportunity to think regionally and to think really, clean slate. Let's put all the ideas on the table and figure out what's going to work within this. So we're in the works on that. We're of the same mind, and we'll have more to report on that soon.
Thank you.
And if I could add as well, too, the Part 150 Technical Review Committee is made up of land use planners from around the area, and we have added a land use planner from unincorporated King County to be part of that conversation, and they'll represent the White Center, Boulevard Park, Vashon areas as well, too.
Great. So we'll make sure David knows who that person is?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. I promise not to take too much time. I'd love to hear that the state advocacy is going to be an ongoing effort. How frequently are we going to receive formal recommendations for the Port of Seattle operations from START? Do they not advise on port?
Could you give an example, Commissioner, of what you're referring to?
Actually, no. Like, is START going to come to us with recommendations the way they lobby the state, the way they lobby the FAA? Are they going to lobby us for anything in particular? I mean,
so that's and Andres might. Sorry, Commissioner, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. Andres might want to speak to this as well. We had our in-person annual planning meeting with START just last month, and one of the really interesting conversations, we had some pretty structural, sort of fundamental conversations about, what is START for, and what do we do, and what don't we do? And one of the topics of conversation is, what are the things that make sense for START as a collective body that work collectively to work on versus what are some things that maybe the cities outside of START want to engage directly with the commission on? And we actually started to list out, obviously not comprehensively, what some of those things might be. And so our general thinking, and again, would love Andres to comment on this, is there are things that START does together, and because Port is part of START, we're not lobbying ourselves, right? We're going to go out to external folks, whether it be cities, states, federal government, et cetera. That will be all externally facing. But we will, when different topics come up in START that are really more appropriate for the cities, we'll say, that's a great city conversation. Let's go talk to Steve Metrick about that. Let's go talk to the commissioners about that. So, Andres, anything more you'd want to say on that front?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Just to add on, this is one of the things that we discussed around the structure of START, which is consensus-based. And so, where we have agreement and where we understand that all the, the steering committee members are kind of moving in the same direction, let's proceed with that agreement. Where folks are in diverse opinions, so that then those individual stakeholders or cities can go and engage the port or can go and engage an airline or another city on their own time, but it's not necessarily a START activity. And so that's one of the things, Commissioner, that we're still working through that was a result of that in-person meeting that we hope to have more movement on in 2025.
I think advisory committees and groups like this are so important to be able to mechanize the way that we're receiving, community-based information and priorities. We receive an annual, report from PCAT. It just seems like we would want to be able to maybe interact with them directly at some point. And I wonder, do they ever working collaboratively or in consultation with the JAC or the Highline Forum? And is there any overlap in the membership between those three groups?
With the Highline Forum, yeah, definite overlap. And so at every Highline Forum meeting, we do a START update so the electeds in the Highline Forum can know what START's been doing. And if certain programs and initiatives are developed by START, we do ask to bring those to the Highline Forum to get their thumbs up as well, too. So there is a connection with the forum. JEC, the membership is the same, but I don't believe there are START updates at JEC meetings.
Okay. And does the Port Commission have any authority to shape START procedures or the meeting structure?
The shaping of any procedures or meeting structures are done by the steering committee, of which the Port's a member.
And can you tell me, not the names of individuals, but like who are steering committee members?
It's the airport director, or right now the interim airport director, and then it's all representation from the 6 cities, typically a city manager or an equivalent then serves as well too. And then Alaska and Delta both have reps on the steering committee.
And beyond the steering committee, then who are members? Or is that it?
That is it for the steering committee. There's support staff as well too. We're there to be in a support.
You're saying beyond the steering committee who are START members?
Correct.
So yeah, so each city has both the staff person, whether the city manager equivalent, plus 2 community representatives. Those 2 community representatives are appointed by each city. So each city essentially has 3 people on START at any given time.
And they decide by consensus-based model decision-making whether to allow for additional people to be START members or to be steering committee members.
The actually, for the START membership, the 6 cities that are members of START is locked into the operating procedures. So you would have to amend the operating procedures to add a new city if they were to go on that.
You would, meaning we would?
The steering committee. Sorry, the steering committee by consensus would make that decision.
So when they make a decision such as unanimously to exclude membership of a King County Council member, their thought process is for their structure that they have a public forum, in this case a webinar, where they could still listen to proceedings, and then an opportunity at the very end to ask questions based upon what they've heard? Or is it public comment?
Public comment.
So they don't have an opportunity to ask questions?
Not of presenters, no.
And then I was going to ask, so the interim aviation director is a member of the steering committee. Are they going to have an opportunity to, as a body, be able to meet with the permanent selection or advise on the selection process or provide input? I know we're talking about in the hiring process maybe having some sort of mechanism for community input. Has START been considered in that?
Commissioner, I don't know if we haven't established those processes
Okay,
yet.
Good enough. And then regarding our advocacy on the federal level, so the big beautiful bill, can you reiterate what exactly the reductions are in the context of port projects? The big beautiful bill, meaning big beautiful bowl, that we had, and I just wanted to clarify, we had nothing to do with it because your presentation, you talked about we were able to secure sustainable aviation fuels. That's a result of us advocating to make sure that it wasn't slashed, correct?
That's correct.
But there were other there were substantial, actually holistic reductions to all our clean energy initiatives. Can you talk?
Absolutely. So the official name of this legislation is the One Big Beautiful Bill. That is the name of the legislation. It is going through a very, very obscure process called budget reconciliation, which I won't bore you all with. But the short version is that the House gets a majority vote, and in this one case, the Senate only needs 50 votes instead of the normal 60. So it's a process by which, if you have the majority in both the House and the Senate, which Republicans do, you can pass anything that is fiscally related no policy, anything fiscally related with just a simple majority vote in the House and Senate. So that's what's going on right now. There are three main components of that legislation. One is a huge increase in spending on defense and immigration enforcement. One is a huge tax cut, about $4 trillion worth of tax cuts. And then the other is about $1.5 trillion in spending cuts. Most of those spending cuts are coming from Medicaid, SNAP, and clean energy tax credits. So it's almost essentially $1.5 trillion in cuts from Medicaid, SNAP, which is food stamps, and clean energy tax credits. We are part of a national coalition called the SAF Coalition, cleverly enough, which is a coalition around SAF. And it has been advocating to say that yes, we understand that you hate clean energy tax credits and you want to get rid of all of them, but SAF is something that has bipartisan support from airlines, airports, refiners, farmers, manufacturers, and again, as we always like to say, not only because of their decarbonization impacts of SAF, but also the reduction in other air particulates that airport communities are concerned about. So a huge win-win for everyone all around. And believe it or not, that argument worked. Seems to have worked so far in being the only tax credit that's maintained, because enough Republicans say, yeah, actually, this is pretty good for the Midwest. You know, our number one champion right now is Senator Jerry Moran, Republican of Kansas. And so it really is quite a statement that over the past however many years that we and many, many other people have been advocating for SAF, it has become such a bipartisan agreement consensus that it's a good thing and we need to keep working on it. So that is a big win. But unfortunately, the port does care a lot about a lot of those other clean energy projects, hydrogen in particular, and a lot of that has just been entirely wiped off. In fact, the House bill at the very last minute not only got rid of them, but got rid of them sooner. So unless your project is fully completed and up and running by 2028, you don't get any tax credits. So not just, oh, I've started this project and it'll be done in 2031, but give me the tax credits because I have a shovel in the ground. It must be fully in service now by 2028, which is almost impossible for most projects at this point.
So when we've been advocating at the state level for investments into the window replacement program, we've also been talking about how the feds really should be putting into that also. What's the prospect on that?
Yeah, so I mentioned Senator Murray and Representative Smith's incredible leadership on that. They believe we can get that done this year. They do. And we have
Via what vehicle?
The National Defense Authorization Act, my favorite piece of legislation, Commissioner Fellman's favorite piece of legislation as well. And so that is an annual defense authorization bill that has to go through every single year. It's gone through every single year for the past 50 years. Representative Adam Smith is the ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee, which gives him great impact and input into that. And so we are hoping that that can be the vehicle this year to get that policy done.
Okay, no further questions. Thank you very much for the presentation. Follow-up questions from Commissioner Fellman.
The ongoing discussion about other regional airports, I see this is part of the state legislative agenda. And I'm just wondering, for this ongoing effort, it's I know very important to the Highline communities that we're not going to build a fourth runway, and so that progress on additional runway or airport services is related, and was wondering what's the latest status.
Well, I know our friends up in Snohomish County have been a little more public about what they're doing. So that's moving forward, as they've kind of talked about and has been reported in even the Seattle Times. The work of the COG continues. There is some additional specificity attached to the funding that was passed in the state transportation budget to give them hard deadlines. Additional things they had already been working on, but actually officially establishing it as part of their appropriation as well. Really, the only thing that's disqualified is studying the use of military bases, so JBLM. And until the chair of the Transportation Committee in the House no longer is from Tacoma or something like that, I think that will continue to be the case, regardless of whether folks think that JBLM could be a possible solution to part of that problem in the future.
Well, the reality is all airport experts know that JBLM will be the next regional airport because it's the only one that makes sense. But what I was thinking, that the study that needs to be done is to look at all the military bases in the country other than JBLM and to understand how the military bases that share with commercial operations, what is the special sauce that has allowed them to coexist? And I understand there's like a half dozen actual military ports, and there's like a dozen Air National Guards. And I'm just wondering, do you think a study like that would be off limits?
Per your input, actually, had a conversation with the director of WashDOT Aviation fairly recently about whether or not that could fit into the updated scope of work for the COG, and she believes it could.
That would be great, because there's obviously, I don't blame the military for wanting it all to themselves, but they are public servants, and the ultimate general is the appropriator, and so the nice thing about them, they can fall in line if indeed this is the national interest. The other thing is that our problem is not unique to the Northwest. Airport capacity is a problem nationally. And so the idea of being able to find ways to share airspace, obviously they didn't do a very good job in D.C., but where you can share airspace, it seems to be of importance to know what is the way to do that safely.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions, I think that concludes this portion. Thank you very much for the presentation, and we'll move forward in the agenda. Clerk Hart, please read it into the record, and Executive Director Metrick will introduce it.
Thank you. This is Agenda Item 11C, Diversity and Contracting 2024 Annual Report and Resolution Number 3836, amending the Diversity and Contracting Directive Policy to increase women and minority business opportunities briefing.
Commissioners, at the beginning of 2024, you passed an order directing us to update our diversity and contracting goals to have a port-wide WIMBY goal of 15% of total port spend and to have 400 firms utilized. I'm pleased to report that we are trending in the right direction, and our diversity and contracting team will have more insights to share on our progress. This report will cover our roadmap to achieve these goals, followed by a resolution with proposed updates to the program that will apply through 2030. And so we have a number of speakers here. So we have Meehan Rice, Director of Diversity and Contracting, Emily Ho, Program Manager, Diversity and Contracting, and Lawrence Coleman, WIMBY Manager. So, and Mandela, as I see Mandela as well. So.
Nope. I'm moving here. Oh, well, there it is. Speak to the mic. Excuse me, Commissioners, losing my voice here. I apologize, but pleasure being here to you today. My name is Meehan Rice, Director of Diversity and Contracting Department. I do also want to send the greetings also to Executive Director Steve Metrick and the listening public who's all here today. I also, prior to getting started on this 2-hour presentation, I want to give a special big warm welcome and also a continued just a big thank you for our new Director in the Economic Development Division. Her name is A. Boingjukta. Hopefully I pronounced her name correctly. So she's been a fabulous supporter of the Diversity and Contracting Department and truly hit the ground running. She is just a wonderful addition to the division, and I'm so happy that Diversity and Contracting Department is under this new leadership. So without further ado, I also real quick wanted to acknowledge as part of a lot of the diversity and contracting efforts that don't always really get a lot of I guess a tipping of the hat a little bit is our partners, Central Procurement Office, who's not here at the table in terms of the director. Her name is Sophia Mayo, and I want to give a big thank you to her as well. And you'll hear from some of her staff under Mandela Thomas as well, who is the director of the CPO Strategic Partnership and Analytics Department. So, and then lastly, I have a lot of diversity and contracting staff here today, and also I wanted to give a special hello and shout out to Lisa Fair, who's our DBE Federal Program Manager. And so, if you, much love to her and all of her efforts, especially during these times. So, without further ado, next slide, please. Here's the agenda. fairly straightforward. We're going to talk a little about the diversity and contracting program, give you a small video. Then we'll get into the WIMBY results and also a little discussion about the upcoming and diversity and contracting policy directive, at least some proposed efforts that we think for the next 5-year DC policy directive goals can be. And these are, again, as time progresses, you'll notice that these are stretch goals. So, diversity and contracting. Next slide, please. So, diversity and contracting goals. I think you've seen this quite a bit, and also some of the listening audience. We're pretty much here for the most part, and not even just for the most part, to actually advance equity and addressing contracting disparities by increasing the utilization of women and minority business enterprise and disadvantaged firms. 2024 is why we're here today. This is an annual briefing to talk about and give information about our 2024 efforts. This last year was what you would call the gap year. These are our goals, which was to decrease the amount spent on contracts up to 15%. And then also a small adjustment for 2024 gap year goal to increase the number of WIMBY firms doing business with the Port of Seattle up to 400 businesses and firms. So without further ado, I did want to do a quick video, and we'll go from there. Video, please.
As a small business, minority woman-owned business, it's very hard to be taken serious at times. I'm looked at as very young, or, how could I know what I'm talking about? Or how could I get my foot in the door with these bigger general contracting companies? So it's been very nice to have a mentor and hopefully get those doors open for us to connect us with the right people and grow our business.
I used to be the mentee and chasing the work, not knowing who to go to. This program did not exist when I started doing work at the Port of Seattle. If I can help them in any way, I will, because we have to build that network of small minority businesses in Seattle.
Women and minority-owned businesses are an important part of the success story here at the Port of Seattle. I'm proud that for the last 5 years, we've spent $376 million with WIMBY businesses, working with nearly 800 unique women and minority-owned firms. However, there is still more work to be done. Promoting diversity in contracting is an important way that the Port achieves its mission of creating opportunity for all.
Previously, the Port of Seattle had a small business program which achieved more than 30% of port dollars going to small businesses, but diverse businesses were only receiving 5% of the port dollars.
My colleagues and I are called to the work we do at the Port because of our shared commitment to promoting fairness in government and equal opportunities under the law. The Port of Seattle holds the key to a thriving and inclusive future. Now is the time for the Port to lead on building an economy that's prosperous and equitable.
Despite the rhetoric we're seeing in today's political climate, we remain steadfast in our commitment to both diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that includes making sure that those contracts and procurement opportunities reach those communities that are operating their own small and minority businesses. We are absolutely committed to ensuring that $5.6 billion capital budget reaches those communities that are underserved and provides opportunities for generational wealth building for small minority business owners within our communities.
We value each and every diverse and small business that's partnered with us at the Port, and we're eager to build with you for years to come.
Awesome. Thank you all, and also thank you to the videographer who actually helped put this thing together. She did an awesome job, and as well as to you, commissioners, for being part of this, and Executive Metric, Director Metric. This is awesome. 2024, thank you for the next slide. For 2024 WIMBY results, wow, 2024 was a fun year, and I'm using that facetiously, especially with the cyber attack. I want to also give my tip my hat off to the ICT department and all their efforts to restoring our systems. Has just been they did a phenomenal job all last year, and so I want to continue to have a big thank you to them, and also AFR, and also a portion of CPO as well, because they were also instrumental in terms of getting us back on our feet. Now, speaking of CPO, I wanted to have Mandela talk about all the efforts they had to do to provide you some of the numbers that we'll be reviewing today. And so I want to make sure I hand the ball over to Mr. Mandela Thomas to talk a little more about the CPO process and the data that you see.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so the top part is a quick overview, and the second part is some of the challenges that we run into. So essentially, we gather data from about 5 different sources, and that data is populated by hundreds of different people inside and outside the port. So after we get all the data, that needs to be integrated and tied together, and then we have to check it for quality. So if, sometimes you don't want something to show twice, and you want to make sure that nothing disappears. So we have that quality control in there. And then afterwards, we're able to do what everybody likes to see, which is the utilization. What's the total dollars and how much is WIMBY? And so that's the high level overview of what the data analytics team in CPO does. And then we share it with diversity and contracting. So our ability to do that, because of the cyber outage, was impacted for about 6 months because we have 5 systems. We have to wait for all of those things to come back. And once they were back, they said, okay, well, what's the data say? Well, those hundreds of people to enter the data, it took about 2 months to get caught up with 8 months of data entry. And so after that is all done, now we're able to get back to the table and start sharing some updates. So during that time, we weren't just waiting for, ICT to bring all those things back. We were doing a number of improvement efforts. So some of it's related to the speed at which we can provide data. Some of it's related to the quality. Some of it's set up for customer service for the people that have to do the entry work. So we completed more than 20 different projects related to that. And then passing it back to Mian.
Thank you, Mandela. Our next slide, please. I think, commissioners, you've seen this graph before, and also a lot of some of the listening audience. We've come a long way since 2016. And I think even the 5.3 is conservative number, to be honest with you. It probably was lower than 5.3%. 2019 were stars where we actually started the diversity and contracting program and all of its efforts in its entirety, fully implemented. But as you can see from percent utilization all the way to the firm counts, we have continuously improved in a short amount of time as a government economic, generator, port authority. We have done yeoman's work. And I think it's really cool, and there's a contribution to a lot of the staff out there, our project managers, our construction managers, and all of our partners, external-wise as well as internal, as well as you commissioners are laying the foundation of this whole program. So thank you, and also the executive director as well and staff. So I'm going to hand the ball over to Mr. Lawrence Coleman to get into the details of how we did in 2024. Lawrence, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for teeing us up, Mian. Good afternoon, commissioners, executive director Metric. If you could go ahead to the next slide for me, please. As Mia mentioned, I'll be talking about the data specific for 2024, but also putting this in comparison to the trends for how this stacks up to previous years. And just we like this slide because it kind of sets this tone. So from here, I have a few slides just kind of breaking this down. But as Mia mentioned, 2024 was certainly an interesting year. I would say at the beginning of the year, always think about ways to improve things, and then you got a cyber attack that happens, throws things off. But nevertheless, work still got done. I also point out that 2024, we took this year as a gap year to take a look and review processes and see where we can make some improvements. And so, meanwhile, while me and several even of you engage with various folks in the community to try to get some information and some feedback on, some areas of improvement, the work still continued. That great work at the airport still continuing all around the Port of Seattle. But just moving us forward, in 2024, the port spent over $900 million, quite a bit of money, in qualified spend, of which 13.3% went to women and minority businesses, which equates to about, over $124 million. So certainly making some progress. When we look at construction specifically, about $570 million or 64 million, and 64 million went to WIMBY businesses, which is about 11%. And then when we look at non-construction, just over $300 million in total spent, and about 60 million or 16, close to 17% went to women and minority businesses. So as Mian had pointed out, certainly making some progress, but, still got some ways to go. Go ahead to the next slide for me, please. This is a look specifically at just trying to put WIMBY firms in broader categories. We wanted to do this chart just to kind of visually show what that 13% looks like in relation to all of the money that the port spends, right? And so, you'll hear all kinds of things about, women and minority businesses, taking away opportunities. But I think this slide is still kind of telling that it's 13%, right? So we talked about this and just wanted to show just kind of in relation. I won't read all of the particular categories, but again, just really wanted to try to show just a distribution of when we talk about just a broader category of women and minority businesses. There is one just in full. Just kind of transparency when you talk about gender unspecified, right? So this is a result of, for whatever reason, either we didn't capture it up front, or folks chose not to identify. But it is some work that we're trying to do with regards to better quality assistance or quality assurance, and just doing a better job of just trying to identify firms when we do count. But just wanted to point that out. And then we've came here before and talked about minority females. We're still at 1% or $6 million, and so some work that we're always trying to do when we talk about targeted outreach and trying to do a better job of engaging folks. Go ahead to the next slide for me, please. This is another slide. I think this slide speaks to intentionality. We talked in previous years about disparities, and those disparity studies are specific to try to understand what groups aren't getting opportunities. And so this is I would say a telling slide. I think it's a transparent slide, and I think it's one that we hold ourselves accountable to as well. And so I will say that we've seen these numbers fluctuate from year to year. I think we've talked in years past where Native American firms owned firms were at the bottom with a few $1 million. We've seen this number where African American firms were in the bottom, to this year looking at, Asian owned firms and Black American owned firms, at the top, when we're talking specifically about the ethnicity. We do see that Caucasian, white female owned firms are leading the way, about $92 million, 92 firms, and about $31 million for this particular year. But again, I just like to point this slide out just to remind folks of the intentionality. We do our best to try to do targeted outreach, which my colleague here will talk about some of the outreach activities and engagement activities that we do. But again, this is one of the ways that I feel that our team holds ourselves accountable to our community by being transparent with, how the particular groups are earning dollars. Go ahead to the next slide for me, please. as a reminder, we establish goals. These next two slides really speak to leadership accountability. The policy resolution called for accountability, not just from our office, right? I think at times when we run these programs, it's one office that's responsible for it. But over the last 5 years, I feel like the port has taken an approach that we're all responsible, right? We all have some ownership where it's not just diversity and contracting that's owning numbers, but it's flowed down to the various divisions and departments. And so each of the executive leadership team members establish goals. And that's what you're looking at here. Again, on non-construction, I would say we stay pretty constant. And so historically, I don't think we've dropped below 14%. And so in this year, 16% is what we hit just port-wide, which I'll show in another slide. But I really just wanted to share just really specifically talking about the accountability and how it's not just held with regards to one office, that it's flowed down to various divisions. Go ahead to the next slide for me, please. And this is just a continuation of, those goals, right, and that accountability. This is a specific breakout for the corporate division. One of the things I like to point out here is I think sometimes folks get excited. They see high numbers, right, high utilization, but, sometimes the dollars don't necessarily reflect like, a big tick or a big move in percentage, right, for the port. But what I will say is that each of these folks, or each of the departments here, has folks that are on the executive leadership team. They all establish goals. And I think one of the biggest contributors with regards to the corporate unit is when we talk about the number of firms. And so a Wimby firm doesn't care, necessarily how you're doing organizationally, like toward that. Folks want to see to it that, money is going to their particular business. And so what I will say is that a lot of these firms, or excuse me, a lot of these departments contribute quite a bit, in particular when we talk about some of the smaller purchases. Some of the dollars and some of the opportunities that don't always get advertised, where a department can pick up the phone and, use someone, for some trade show items, for example, right? And so just shout out to the divisions and departments that support this effort, that take it serious and establish goals on an annual basis. Go ahead to the next slide for me, please. And so, as I mentioned, I shared just a little bit about just the trends. And so we decided to look at the last 6 years, starting in 2019. And this is specific for non-construction. As I mentioned, I feel like we stay pretty constant, and some may even say stagnant, right? We had a high in 2020 of, just over 20%. And we haven't climbed back out of that 16% area. So always looking for ways to improve opportunities. So not really much to say here, as opposed to, I think the question is, are we stagnant? On our non-construction spend, this would consist of professional, personal services, P-card services, or excuse me, P-card spend. Some of them are as a result of a contract when we put a goal and we're evaluating what a response is and such. But really here, again, I think the aim is just to show progress and potentially identify some trends, some things that we could take a look at, as we think about what the next iteration of the program is going to look like. Go ahead to the next slide for me, please. Now here's construction. So if you look at 2024, we haven't seen spend quite as high in a few years. I thought it was interesting to see that unlike in other years where the spending on construction, the Wimby utilization kept up with that. If you look at 2021, for example, right, where we hit 13%, and in this particular year, not so much. I try to steer clear of causation and try to say more so correlation. I was also told do not do math in public, but I will offer this. The port is not by design. We have sophisticated work. We want to improve the passenger experience. So oftentimes, some of the work, for example, like a baggage optimization project, right? That's $100 million that's going to hit the bottom line, where there's not a lot of firms just in general that do that work, let alone WIMBY firms, right? So when we take a look at that for analysis, we might do a 1%, 2% goal, right? To the chagrin sometimes of community, sometimes to even you all, where you all are asking some questions when it comes before you for approval. So I would associate, some of that with regards to, the type of work that we do. I would also associate, some of this to some of the issues that we have with regards to some of the barriers and maybe even the interest that folks have with chasing work at the Port of Seattle, which, when we talk about what the next iteration will look like, me and I'll touch on some of that. But again, just wanted to share just historically what we've looked like over the last few years when we talk about construction spending. Go ahead to the next slide for me, please. And so we're in the home stretch here, at least for my piece. Me and will talk at lengths if you don't stop them. So as I mentioned, 2024 was our gap year. Again, we took some time, with you all's support to just take a pause, worked with CPO. We participated in some lean efforts, but all in the way to take a look at the program to see where we can make some refinements. So just a couple of things. We talk about virtues, some things I would say are strengths. We had a record spend for WIMBY firms in 2024, spending $124 million. So that means that went directly to firms in our community, which is pretty cool. WIMBY utilization in non-construction, I would say it remains consistent. I don't know if high is necessarily the fairest thing to say, but I would say it remains consistent at that mark. Construction spend total construction spend and WIMBY utilization, I would say they've made some upward trajectories in the last few years. When we talk about challenges, the reality is we have not hit that 15% mark. I think we have one estimation where we would say, I think we said something like 17 or 18% needed to go to WIMBYs on the construction space to get there. So that's something to think about. I don't know if that's still the most accurate mark, but nevertheless, the point is that construction will need to increase as we see it's the greatest opportunity to get to that 15%, but we still haven't achieved that. And then lastly, the port, we fell short. We established a 400 WIMBY firm count goal in 2024, and we fell short by just about 12 firms. With that, I will pass it to my colleague, Emily Ho, to talk about all of the great stuff she does to support getting women and minority businesses notifications.
Thank you, Lawrence. Good afternoon, commissioners. Good afternoon, Executive Director Metric. My name is Emily Ho. I am the Program Manager for Community Engagement and Training for the Diversity and Contracting team. I will just be providing a very high-level overview of the program in 2024. The goal of the program is to establish relationships with women and minority-owned business firms, help provide them with the resources and the information that they need to pursue port work, as well as to help increase their firm capacities or assist them in doing so. And so we have a number of activities that we do, most of which fall under that Port Gen umbrella. That includes a lot of online webinars, in-person networking events. Next week, we'll have June 2nd, largest event of the year, Aviation Industry Day, where we've got, I think, over 400 folks signed up to hear about our aviation projects and the opportunities there. That's just to name a few. But real high level, compared to last year, we were affected by the cyber incidents. Typically for WIMBY firm vendor connect registrations, that's onto our contracting portal, where we average around over 100, but because of the incident, we had only 60 registrations. So we have some catching up to do this year. But it's been offset by the fact that we had more one-on-one assistance probably also related to the fact that Vendor Connect wasn't available. But that's a fantastic thing in which we actually get to have one-on-one time with these businesses to help guide them a little bit more through what can be a very complicated process. So that is some of the comparisons to last year. Some of the new efforts or new and improved efforts that we've had is really working with our colleagues in aviation project management group. Shout out to Stuart Matthews and Greg Carey. We've been meeting with them each month to find out what are the contracts that are coming up over the horizon so that we can actually get that information out to firms months in advance. And that's the timeline that they need to be able to actually get on some of those teams to pursue that work. So we've really increased the regularity of these online webinars, which I'm thrilled about. And then we have also increased the accessibility of our resource video library. We've added a number of additional technical assistance videos onto our website and made them a lot more digestible and accessible, which I'm really excited about. So that wraps up training and outreach for 2024.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Emily and Lawrence. Appreciate you, all your efforts. And just to give you kind of a glimpse of what we did over 2024 was quite a bit, just for each quarter, and just kind of tease up to the next section here. But just so that you know, quarter one, that was the end of our previous 5-year DC goals. And quarter one, we took a look at, we did an evaluation of our program itself. We had a commission order, which extending our policy. And as part of that commission order, that's where we increased the number of firms from 354 businesses to 400. And that was phenomenal. And we're still continuing to grow. Quarter two, evaluation of the results. We had a disparity study that we conducted. We reviewed and refreshed the policy. We did some community engagement, not some, we did a lot of community engagement actually. We had community stakeholder input and policy and program goals. And now we're coming towards the end of 2024, now into 2025, where we're looking at what our new DC diversity and contracting policy directive and our goals will be. And that'll happen sometime in the future. And we're going to segue into kind of the thought process for the future of our program. And without further ado, I did want to tap the brakes for one quick second and hand the ball over to my V. Thank you. I apologize. I literally had a brain frog in my thought process. But V, who's part of your commission staff, and we'll talk a little more about the resolution and the directive. Thank you, V.
Thank you, Director Rice. I do not blame you for your elder moment there. So V Nguyen, the commission office. I'm just here to, next slide, please. And next slide. So I'm just here to refresh our memory a little bit of how we got here and where we're going. So for discussion only today, we're just doing a review of Resolution 3836, a little preview rather. So this is really building off of Resolution 3737, which was adopted in January 2018. So this formally codified the program for the diversity and contracting program. It set the program at 5 years, and there are a couple elements that were critical to the standing up of the former program. So there were goals and timelines, incorporation of the WIMBY goals into the Port's long-range plan, and just like any program, government program, we want to collect data and publish annual reports. There were some critical elements of technical assistance, trainings, outreach that Emily detailed, conducting disparity studies, just so that we know where we're going, we know what we're doing, and we can report back to constituents and also to the businesses and to the outside world of we set a goal, we're saying that we want to do this and accomplish this, and this is how we're proving that we're doing the work and staying true to our values. So as Director Rice detailed, the process of updating the directive has been very involved, and there's been a lot of engagement from his team. But on the commission office side, we've also held 3 roundtables with most of the commissioners present at each one of the, 2 commissioners present at each one of the roundtables. And, we really did a lot of active listening and made sure to try our best to be responsive to what we heard. And as staff sitting at each of those tables, the number one thing that we heard over and over is increasing access to opportunity. And so I will hand this back over to Director Rice to share what we came up with.
Oh, thank you, V. I appreciate you. Next slide, please. Okay. On the left-hand side, I'll start off there, some directive language updates. And at the end of the day, trying to use, and this is stretch goals that we're proposing here as a policy update of getting up to 16% instead of 15, up to 16. And this is despite not originally achieving our 15% goal, but I still think the next 5 years continue to push that envelope and actually increase the number of women, minority, and disadvantaged firms participating on port projects, as well as increasing the number of women, minority, and disadvantaged businesses, WIMBY businesses for short, up to 500. So moving from 400 to 500 with a sub goal, which is a sub aspirational goal of 14% utilization for construction. And this is something that came out of the disparity study in terms of the availability of WIMBY firms within our construction-related activities, that they felt that some of the folks will be out there. So having a sub-goal for our next 5 years of trying to achieve that 14%. Continued engagement for firms of upcoming opportunities, and also include certified small businesses as defined by Office of Women, Minority, Disadvantaged Businesses through the state. Now, on the left-hand side for program improvements, falls into more of the small ball. This falls into trying to get into more small works contracts, developing and formalizing a limited public works program, and also really try to continue to push on those alternative delivery methodologies, those GCCM, those design builds, and so forth. And so a lot of the community members out there that we've talked with, they're like, hey, I love working on port projects. It's great. I unfortunately have to work under Prime. I would love to have something in which I can directly work with you, the Port of Seattle, and finding those small projects. And so a lot of businesses out there in which we've talked to, both externally, says, yeah, I'd like to have those little something that we can work directly on. And so again, that's that kind of that small ball, really focus on the small works, those limited public works program, and alternative delivery methodologies. And that's actually, alternative delivery methodologies is more for the larger projects, but because of the contract type, we're able to have a little more conversations with the prime contractors in this regards. And so it gives us a lot of flexibility. And then also to improve prompt payment and change orders. These are areas in which we've heard over and over again throughout the past year or so, and change orders. So I know that we are in the Q4 of this year. We're planning doing a lean process with CPO to get into kind of the understanding of the prompt payment, figure out some alternatives or some thought processes, how we can move the needle forward to pay our contractors a little more quicker than it has been. But, again, that's something that we're highlighting. And then also as well of all business, you got to have bonding and insurance depending upon the project, and level setting a little more so about for the scopes of work matches the bondings or insurance that's needed depending upon what the project is or that effort is. So I know that the diversity and contracting program along with risk management are working hand in hand trying to figure this thing out the best way, and adding a little more flexibility to our small businesses out there and diverse businesses that are actually working on our projects in this regards. I'm going to skip this next one here. I'm going to go straight to the collect data on the timely dispatch on contracts and jobs with the Port of Seattle. And this one falls into just tracking. There are some small businesses that sometimes that we've heard that said that some of the workers in which they get dispatched from the hall, sometimes they have to turn around a little sooner rather than later. And so we want to make sure that we actually capture that data, and something that we are not capturing in-house that we want to make sure we keep track of. And then going back to that second bullet in terms of inclusion of veteran-owned businesses with port-wide WIMBY plus VBE. The veteran-owned business, this is not part of the actual goal itself, the 16%, but it's just more about tracking. It's more about just being more deliberate about our tracking of our veteran businesses. Again, this is not part of the 16% goal. This is just more about tracking, outreach, and efforts for and making sure that all parties actually have those opportunities, but also being able to highlight those vets out there that are looking at doing work with the Port of Seattle. Next slide, please. Okay. So we're getting to the 2025 program goals. And I'm actually going to start off with the division goals on the right-hand side. This is dealing with this again. Our division directors set non-construction goals based off of the budgets that they perceive that they're going to have for 2025. And as you can see, aviation has the 14%. They're shooting for that. Economic development 10%. Maritime 14, corporate 16, and just I guess as a port-wide effort, trying to achieve that 16%. So these are for 2025 goals for each one of our divisions. Now, on the left-hand side for the port-wide goals, as again I mentioned from the previous slide, construction and construction percentage spend for WIMBY firms, we're looking at 16%. Again, where it says plus V is just more think of it as a silo. We're just looking at trying to make sure we track better and get a better understanding of how veterans get on our projects and efforts, including outreach and trainings. Number of WIMBY firms, again, 500, and then construction port spend up to 14%. Next slide, please. This gets into kind of the thought process. This is for some of the folks in the listening audience, as well as you commissioners. This gets into the proposed number of WIMBY firms for utilization goal. This kind of shows in orange what the previous 5 years used to look like, 354. That was our goal. We achieved 392. Gap year, again, 388 to 400, but we're saying that we're going to try to push for the next 5 years, trying to get up to 500, utilize over 500 firms. Again,
noting for the record that Commissioner Calkins has exited the meeting. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. For this WIMBY utilization number of firms, PCARDs, we do a lot of PCARD activities. Sometimes some of the PCARDs might not capture all of our WIMBY businesses in which we leverage. That's, if you go to, especially from an ethnicity perspective, if you go to, I don't want to stereotype names, but I'll just say Shaniqua. How about that? And we'll say, hey, we'll go to a hairdresser. We hit the card, play with the P card. Supposedly, it may capture it as a WIMBY businesses, but it doesn't capture the ethnicity of that said business. So that could affect some of the data and that we receive in the previous slides. Next slide, please. This one is the proposed percentage for WIMBY utilization goals. Again, you heard this before. 15% was our previous years. We're recommending going up to 16% with a sub-construction WIMBY goal of 14%. And, from our driver perspective, construction, professional service, architectural engineering, those are our biggest drivers for the percentages in which are driving our utilization goals. However, we do have some detractors here that we've heard from. And again, this is a lot of data collection from the DC team, both internally wise and externally wise. So our port capital program, there's a balance between bundling for efficiency versus unbundling projects for increased women, minority, disadvantaged business participation. And some of the drivers and some of the detractors, so to speak, depending upon that business, one of the areas that a lot of folks talk about is project labor agreements or components within it. Cash flow, cash flow is king for small businesses, and as well as prompt payment. They got to keep the doors open, and payments got to continue to move forward in their pockets as they continue to grow their business, as well as bonding and insurance. And again, I talked about that a little earlier in regards to risk management. So, next slide, please. And with this slide, I'm actually going to hand the ball over to Emily Ho and to talk a little about 2025 and training and outreach program efforts. Emily?
Thanks, Mian. So this slide shows all of the many training and outreach activities that will be going on in 2025. We're going to continue building on the great work that we accomplished in 2024. I do want to highlight 3 new initiatives that we are that are underway. And the common theme between the 3 is just increased collaboration. So Port Gen 101 orientations, these are online monthly meetings where we focus on just construction contracting. So you want to be a construction contractor at the port. What do you know? We need to know from kind of just basic fundamentals to this is what the process actually looks like. And I was really lucky to have Angela Peterson, CPO Assistant Director for Contracting Construction, to build that presentation and give that with me in April. And so in the following months, we're going to be focusing on goods and services and then service agreements. And this is really only made possible by partnering with our CPO colleagues. There is also the capacity building mentorship program that we will be hoping to join. This is a mentorship program that already exists with Sound Transit and WashDOT. They've been doing it for many years. We, along with some other agencies, are hoping to join in on that and leverage that and build on that in either this year or upcoming year. So more to come on that. There'll probably be an MOA that will be required, but that's a really exciting opportunity to really work with our sister agencies towards a similar goal. And then lastly, we're working on Vendor Connect enhancements, really hoping to make that a useful directory of choice for folks around the port, as well as external stakeholders, to find diverse businesses when they have a business need. As it exists right now, Vendor Connect is not the best tool for that. And so I've been working with folks on the change team to head up this effort. So really excited to have input from folks around the port to create and enhance this tool that they will actually use going forward.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Emily. Next slide, please. All right, coming to the end. So next steps, other next steps that we're really pushing on. Again, some of this, a lot of stuff you heard from the previous slide decks, but developing a limited public works program for small businesses. We're really trying to push and develop an A&E or architecture and engineering program for small and disadvantaged businesses, veterans and women businesses alike, and truly looking at adjusting our professional service categories to really play small ball. And then the next one is improve prompt payment procedures for construction projects in collaboration with CPO, and improve insurance flexibility for small businesses, continue to push alternative delivery methodologies, provide ongoing training for women, minority, disadvantaged businesses, veteran, and small businesses. And this is particularly on project labor agreements. We just signed the last project labor agreement last year. I believe it was last year. But regardless of that, small businesses, heck, medium and large businesses need to really understand what's really in the agreements moving forward as we conduct our Port of Seattle's business. So we want to make sure that we're all in alignment or in sync of understanding what's in it. And then also, lastly, improve data collection systems in partnership with CPO. So with that, next slide, please. I'm giving you a big thank you and good night. So here we go.
Thank you very much for the presentation. All right, colleagues, at this time, I'll turn to you all for questions and comments that you may have. Commissioner Filliman.
Thank you so much for squeezing all that good work into this presentation. I think it's apropos that we include recognition of veterans on Memorial Day weekend. And so thank you for that inclusion. And I guess, giving visibility to it, I really appreciate that. And I guess technically veterans aren't in that categories, but the educational part, the outreach seems to be kind of uniquely different. So and when you say education, do you have like a strategy for the outreach part of that?
The short answer is yes. We do have, because coming out of, I used to work in years past for the Department of Defense, and there's a different language in the military. And so coming into the public sector, sometimes that crossing over from the military language to civilian, especially when you're trying to get the job or from a business perspective, trying to really make sure that they understand how government is working, and that's in charge of, and that's with the partnership with Miss Emily Ho here of saying, hey, here's opportunities, and I want to make sure you understand opportunities and understand what's being said in the contracts and efforts in which you're trying to go after. So we do have a strategy. There's a lot of overlap with our current port gen activities, but there's also some additional training and things like that some veteran folks might need to have. And I've got a few calls about that saying, what does this mean? And so that explanation. But other than that, there's a lot of overlap with our current program.
Yeah, you have a young bucks like our executive who, you end up getting you retire out of Coast Guard after a couple of rounds, so you have some still able-bodied people ready
Absolutely.
to enter the workforce, and
100%.
I'm sure everybody's got their own association. I just wanted to draw attention to slide 13 and 14.
Slide 13 and 14.
I think so much information is packed into that, but I wanted to pack some more into it because I'm just a glutton for punishment. So the trend data I think is very important to get a sense of, and you can explain some of that even though you don't want to go beyond correlation. With COVID or whatever, there are certain things we could foresee. And the discussion before, I just saw some stories that, construction is expected to be down because of tariffs and uncertainties. So there's a bunch of projects, large projects across the country that have been put on hold. So, when you start elevating those goals, keep that next dip in mind. But the pie chart that you showed, the changes in these hires, it varies by the different categories of minority and women-owned businesses. And we know that minority women are the smallest piece of the pie. But I was just wondering if we had that sort of same color coding that you have in the pie chart in each one of these histograms, you could sort of see relatively, proportionally within those years, who's doing better than others and why in one year were we doing better, and help explain that trend. And we can go back and look at over time, are those categories holding steady or are they varying? And maybe we could understand a different targeting based on that. So it would become like a real zebra striped, complicated slide, but you have the percentages, you have the hard dollars, and then you can just look at the distribution of, you've already collected the data. So anyway, I think you can have a 2-slide presentation next time. And then you have your goal, obviously, and I appreciate all that work. Lastly, how does this compare to Sound Transit in King County? Do they have similar goals? And are they changing their goals? I mean, it seems to me that that's always the question I ask every time is like, where does this number come from? How is this aspiration decided? And I'm just wondering, our colleagues in brethren governments, are their goals similar to ours?
I can't speak on the other government entities, to be honest with you. How they came up with their goals outside of, I think Sound Transit get a lot of federal dollars, so they have a DVE goals that's set specifically on their 3 lines of business, if I believe. So light rail, commuter rail, and express bus service, I believe it is. From King County, I think they have a different capital program A. They do have a little small airport, but in terms of the largety of our actual projects are significantly larger, especially from an airport perspective. So the county has what they call the small contractor and supplier program, where it's just basically, if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's half the size standards of the SBA criteria. So they created that years and years ago. But how they came up specifically for the goals per each department or division within King County, that's something I can't answer.
I just, again, it would seem to be instructive to know in those agencies that are doing a lot of construction work, how their trends are going, even if we have different goals, are they showing similar fluctuations, or is there some other special sauce that we can look at?
Will do. I can take a look at that, get it even closer. I do know is that a lot of there's some overlap with some of the firms that they use versus what we use. I mean, we'll just use painters, right? A painter can go almost anywhere. However, they don't have elevator escalator businesses or baggage claim businesses or things in that way where there's a lot of work. But we do a heck of a lot of work in the electrical side of the coin, where all 3 counties and cities and us use a lot of the electrical contractors out there. And so we burn through them, no pun intended, quite a bit. There's a lot of electrical work that we, from a contracting perspective,
I'm sure the data would be shocking.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, and I'll be in Las Vegas next week. Let's finish this up. Thank you.
Commissioner Chope.
Yeah, I just had a quick question on the numbers here. Slide 8 shows that our non-construction wind utilization is 16.6%. But if you go down to the area where it's broken down on slide 12, it's as high as 27%. So I'm trying to understand what the distinction is.
Thank you for that question, Commissioner. So slide 12 is specific to corporate. So that's a breakout of the corporate division, whereas the previous slide is all of non-construction.
Okay, so I see. So non-construction is a bigger umbrella than just corporate. So
Correct.
What would the distinction? Give me an example of what's non-construction but not corporate.
Well, no, corporate is describing the division. So the work could potentially be the same. It's just, and so we wanted to show executive leaders and what their respective spend was for the year and the goals that we established. So we provided another slide specifically to break out construction, corporate.
So what is, so shouldn't everything be under these executive, like what would not fall under this umbrella of corporate non-construction?
So what would not fall under corporate would be aviation and maritime, for example, and economic development.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so corporate is all by itself. And again, we just really wanted to honor the folks for spending all the time, getting bothered by our team to establish goals, and just wanted to break that out, and also, try to show how it's a shared, accountability. And again, non-construction would include purchase card, spend, professional and personal services, goods and services.
So why isn't EDD and why is EDD not part of corporate? I don't understand.
Those are the business lines, Commissioner. So the corporate is the non-business lines, the cross-functional efforts, and then the 3 business lines are the other non.
You're talking about the administrative side. This is okay. So when you say corporate, you're talking about like administrative.
Not the overall, not the big corporate. The corporate being central services.
Right, central
Right.
services.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an important distinction. I didn't.
And in fairness, you figure the overall
Yeah.
corporate versus the operating business lines in the.
And it might be just for our own kind of definition, but we tried our best to match what the budget looks like, right? And so there's budget orgs and codes and different naming conventions, and try to be consistent with that. So
Yeah.
but certainly always open to recommendations if there's a better way to display that.
Got it. Okay, so it's more central service / admin.
Correct.
Not. Okay, that makes a lot more sense to me. Okay, I think that was the only major question I had on here.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for leading on that, because that was one of my questions too. Maybe we can think through that some more about the best way to convey that. Commissioner Mohammed.
Well, I don't have any questions. I wanted to thank you all for the detailed presentation, and also the presentation that you guys recently provided us in committee, and just honor the hard work that goes into this. I think the breakdown of just the amount of engagement that's happening, especially during a cyber attack, that you all were able to still meet with folks, speaks volume to the impact and what you all are doing. And then I just also wanted to underscore and say that I appreciate that the prompt payment is going to be included in the revised version of the resolution. And so I'm looking forward to that coming forward, because I feel like whenever I'm talking to a lot of our WIMBY businesses, that is what I'm consistently hearing, is them wanting to see us make some changes around prompt payment, and that having a great impact for them if we made sure that we paid them more on time, and not just paying them on time as in the subcontractors as well. And so whatever we can do in our power to make that happen, I'm looking forward to your recommendations on that and seeing how do we implement it, how do we put resource behind it as commissioners. And so, I look forward to that, those recommendations coming forward. Thank you again.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I wanted to commend you all for this incredible body of work that you've been leading, and thank you for bringing it to us in such a succinct presentation. I know how proud you are of this, and I know how proud we are of this. And, of all the thanks and recognitions that you give, Director Rice, I do want to say leadership certainly matters for vision and the drive and the execution of the work. And so I'd just like to take a moment to also recognize you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you for
Appreciate
everything that you're doing, and the phenomenal team that you have to show for this labor of love. I just wanted to point out overall, the climate in which we're operating, there is progress, and I will talk about the progress, but I thought that pie chart was really important also for us to set the context of this conversation and why it's important, right? We have $808 million, or 87% of the overall spend, still going to white male firms. And if you include 6% going to white women, that's 93% of all those dollars still going to white-owned firms. And so, we're operating in a climate where there are threats from the federal administration on diversity in contracting. We said in our last public meeting how important it is for us to maintain our commitment to diversity in contracting, but this is what proves that it's the absence of these efforts that leads to discrimination, not the presence of them. So thank you for the work that you're doing in anti-discrimination. and bringing that into our practices. That's institutionalizing our work to create access to opportunities for people, regardless of their race, regardless of their gender or their sex. In 2024, it's notable we did have record spend for WIMBYs, but I also we should celebrate that, and I'm very, very proud of that. That's not on accident, and it does show that year over year, percentage-wise, it came down, but by hard numbers, it still went up. But we did fall short of our goal by 12 firms, and we talk about the why. And we're not talking about, I didn't hear you name causation specifically, but the why is important because that's what we need to continue to work on. And there's been a lot of stakeholdering that's happened for people talking about all the different reasons why. So the last part of your presentation, talking about what more we can do, what more we're willing to do, is really exciting. I want to thank all of you, and I want to thank Strategic Advisor VWIN for your work in managing those stakeholdering meetings. Yes. You had 4 out of 5 commissioners who showed up,
yes,
including Commissioner Mohammed, Commissioner Cho, Commissioner Calkins, and I know Commissioner Felleman would have. He's always there in spirit, but it's really just a matter of capacity and quorum. Truly, you have, I'd like to think, unanimous support from the commission in going forth and doing the work that you're doing. And I would like to think that you have us in iterative consultation, right? As we set more audacious goals year by year to be able to see that on the back end as outcomes, right? We want outcomes. So all is to say is this has been a very, very heavy lift, and one that you've all carried with your hands with a lot of care. So thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you for the work that you're doing. I hope all of you are incredibly proud, as I know that we are. So, and we look forward to what you're able to come to bring to us at the next presentation by way of an order.
Great. Thank you, commissioners.
I think I've got one more question over here from Commissioner.
Sorry, I just remembered the other question I had in the middle of your presentation is, I know that our metrics have traditionally been around percentage spend and number of WIMBYs. I think me and you and I have had so many conversations around how that's a very difficult balance, right? Do we prioritize number of firms we work with, or do we prioritize the percentage of our spend that we put, give out the door? You could have lopsided results, right? But one thing that occurred to me during the presentation was you're going from a 15% goal interim to 16%, and I think as much as I admire and appreciate your willingness to do that, I feel like that's not a fair metric for you guys, right? Because our percentage, our dollar spend fluctuates every year.
True.
And we talk about $5.3 billion over the next 5 years, but it's not $1 billion every year, right? It's could be $3 billion next year and half a billion, whatever. It's lumpy. Right. And so to have this benchmark of 16%, you could reach 16% next year, but then miss it the year after that because the dollar spend went up so much that you just couldn't keep up with that spend. And so my question here is, why don't we have a metric that is just a fixed dollar amount as opposed to a percentage?
Say that again? What?
Why don't we have a metric for you all that is a fixed dollar amount?
We do.
As opposed to
we want to increase it from 400 to 500.
No, that's the number of firms. I'm talking about how much money we're spending, right? But that's my point. It's a proportion of how much we're spending that year. So if you're spending $1 billion and your goal is 15%, you have to somehow get $150 million out the door to WIMBYs.
Yeah.
Conversely, if the next year we spend $2 billion, you have to get $300 million to WIMBYs. So the goalpost is constantly moving because the amount of money we spend year to year changes.
Yeah.
So my question is, why don't we have a goal for you that is a fixed dollar amount that escalates per year as opposed to us continuing to move the goalpost right? Year to year based on what the port chooses to spend in that 1 year.
What do you think about that?
Short answer is that I like that thought process. So remember, I think I get what you're saying. Something I'll have a conversation with some of our teammates, but it sounds kind of cool. Just remember the whatever the goal is from percentage perspective, we're talking about over 5 years, we're just trying to hit. So we hit the reset button, regardless of what the goal is. It's a percentage of the budget dollars and also main dollars that we're trying to do. But something I think we could look into for sure, Commissioner. I think that sounds kind of cool.
Because, you spent $124 million was 13.3% according to your numbers, right?
Yep.
But that could have been a higher percentage if we spent less money. Right? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, I get what you're saying. Oh, absolutely.
Like you could have hit the 15% if we spent maybe $20 million less that year. Right. So my point being is like, let's come up with a metric that is measures progress, right? As opposed to measuring fluctuation, right? Because that's all at this point, that's what you're doing. You're just measuring the fluctuations as opposed to what the absolute progress is, right? I want to see you go from $124 million to $140 million to $150 million to $170 million, right? Mm-hmm. And that is like, when I go on the road and I talk to constituents, I can say, like, we went from 124 to $150 million in 2 years or something like that, right? That for me is a far more meaningful metric than to go to say, I went from 13 to 14%.
Right.
Let's give ourselves a pat on the back for 1%.
Mm-hmm. But we do give dollars, though.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, we do. All right. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. I love it. So
I'd like to turn to Executive Director Metric as well.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll talk with Director Rice and his team. We collect all that information so we can show it different ways, but you want us to lead with that, and we can take that back to consider that to see what that means.
Yeah, I just don't want to set them up for failure.
Oh no!
If we're spending X amount of dollars in the next 3 years, or the next 5 years,
I understand completely, Commissioner.
That's not going to.
It's a point well taken. What I recall of what we articulated in the past from the dais is that anticipating an unprecedented number of spend in CIPs, we wanted to tie progress so that it was congruent with growth in spend. So, there's fluctuation. We should be flexible.
Yep.
It's like looking at anything. If you have a large percentage of a smaller number or a smaller percentage of a larger number, I think that's your point, Commissioner.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do I have any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, I will thank and dismiss the panel. Thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks.
Well, folks, that's bringing us to the end of our business meeting agenda today. I am wondering, do we have any closing comments, motions, or referrals to committee before we adjourn? Commissioner Fallerman.
I just had the honor of saying a few words at Dan Thomas's retirement party for the commission, and he's like, Stephanie Jones Stebbins now will be the longest standing member. In my short tenure here, we've lost almost this huge brain drain of the ELT. Now we have very smart people that are coming back in, but it's extraordinary. And each one of these times I go to these meetings, you have these incredibly dedicated people at 30 plus years. It's quite extraordinary. And then you have a guy like Luis sitting in the room. He can't get enough of it. I mean, I just love the fact that even our retirees are coming back for more. And I just think it's a great reflection of the spirit of the folks that work here. And I thank you for the leadership to make that possible.
Thank you, Commissioner. Executive Director Metric, do you have any closing comments for us today?
No, thanks, Commissioners. No, I don't. Thanks for the really in-depth, a lot of presentation, a lot of information. I thank you for your attention today on this.
Thank you all very much. Well, hearing no further comments and having no further business before us, the time is 3:23 and we are adjourned.